Chapter 1. The Tide of Death. The ear-piercing crash was the signal for their rushed entry. As the dropship's door opened, 8 soldiers broke through the wreckage of the crash. The metal suits that each wore could withstand the flames of a flamethrower being directed at them and can even block most bullets and armor-piercing rounds. Yet death after this mission was the best they all could hope for. Commander Ivan was the first to exit through the steel cage and blast the panicking soldiers nearby. "Let's do it, men," he cried as the remaining soldiers followed on the assault. The thick armor and bulletproof helmets were all that they had left to count on as the brave soldiers of the Griffin Squadron engaged the enemy soldiers. Clothed in his trademark red suit, Commander Ivan continued to direct orders towards his men at the same time, shooting at any signs of life other than them. "General, where to?" Ivan asked. The general he addressed was checking on a hologram screen being projected at his arms. "Zara's pings confirmed that the locations of the star chamber are where we thought it would be. We continue towards this compartment's star chamber." The general wore a simple suit that would mistake him for a soldier. The only difference was a pair of thin rods protruding at the back. "Suarez, any word from the other team?" 3 teams have reported successful entry and are Oscar mic'd to the targets. Suarez wore a thin blue crystal ring on his head. This ring appeared like an ordinary headband if viewed from afar. A twinkling glow was seen in this ring as Suarez gave a concentrated look. The glow subsided as he exited that state of concentration. "Let's move, Commander," the general spoke. The Griffin Squadron dashed onwards, blitzing and shooting whatever soldier they could find. A blast ultimately hindered their sprint. Several gunshots erupted from the other side of the hall. "Back," Ivan ordered. A series of explosions arrived, and the team hurried to find anything that may shield them from the torrential rain of bullets. Their armors would be pierced through, and only the alien metal that made up the ship could withstand the gunshots. Ivan and the team sent their volley of bullets towards the enemy. The 2 groups began shooting at each other, and soon, several stomping sounds could be heard approaching them. "Suarez, any word on the other teams?" the general called as he heard the strange sounds. Phoenix and Chimera squadrons reporting successful reconfigurations and are on their way to other compartments. Minotaur and Cerberus have yet to make entry. "Then we don't have time for this." The general's suit detached several layers of what consisted his armor. As the last pieces of steel fell, it revealed a dark synthetic clothing that the general wore. Attached above his elbows and on his heels were small turbine-like objects. The general pulled the pair of rods that was protruding on the detached armor, and a pair of transparent crystal blades was unsheathed. The general immediately wore a blue ring over his head similar to the one Suarez wore. The ring emitted a faint blue light. The 2 rings on Suarez and the general's head glowed a faint red and returned to its usual blue. "Proceed as planned. I'll divert the enemies. If we split up here, it will increase the chance of the compartmental disconnection in this sector. We don't have much time." "This is an order, Ivan," the general ordered as he dashed forward towards the opening and bullets rained on. Yet despite the barrage, none of the bullets hit. The speed of this lone soldier who dove at the fray of bullets surpassed the speed a normal human being could accomplish. The transparent blades, which looked like crystals, were slashed towards the soldiers shooting at him. But the crystal blades weren't in any way hindered by the metal armor that the soldiers wore. The blood of these men continued to spill as the general dashed from one soldier to the next, leaving only the dead behind. The fearful stomping sounds that Ivan heard also stopped as the general zoomed past the room. Another group of enemy soldiers halted from their march as they could hear the silencing of their comrades. The soldiers then went into position and aimed their weapons at the nearby door which led to the other side. Was one of them among the groups that infiltrated this ship? The sounds of chaos and gunfire on the other side of the room was silenced. Did their friends manage to kill the intruders? Or did an inhuman manage to enter this ship? The victor was unclear. Wary of the approaching enemies, their sights locked on the possible gap that the door will create as it opens. And the soldiers were ready to pull the trigger at the slightest of movements. Boom! The door suddenly exploded and bodies of dead soldiers started bursting out through the door. The soldiers started shooting randomly at the piles of bodies that were flying around. Ag! The other soldiers could only see a blur race by their comrade, which left their comrade split in half with his upper torso, flying out towards another soldier. "It's Death Tide. Death Tide is on this ship. Repeat, Death Tide is on this ship." This was the last transmission the soldier sent before his entire arm was sliced off. His legs no longer supported him as it too was sliced off. Boom. Explosions rang left and right as the stellar battles over Earth intensified. The tremors felt by the passengers of the bombing grew worse as more bullet-shaped dropships rammed the different compartments. General Death Tide immediately sent a mental message to Suarez. Suarez, I move towards a different compartment. Proceed as planned. The enemy should be focused on killing me. Proceed with caution. I'll meet up with Chimera Squadron. The blue light on the ring grew brighter, and Death Tide received a mental response. Roger. No soldier on sight, sir. After your rampage, most of the enemy soldiers started dashing off to your platform. As you said, General, you are the priority kill. Suarez laughed. Death Tide sent a mental confirmation and went on with his massacre. The speed of his dash exceeded the speed of sound. The 4-force accelerator was a jet propelling system designed to allow nimble, fast, and flexible maneuvers to its wearers. 2 were worn directly above the elbows, and 2 above the heel. This 4 small cylindrical tubes emitted a strong blast force which propels the user onwards to its direction. The FFA, though incapable of long-term flight, allows its users quick and speedy maneuvers, allowing one to pass through the harshest forms of obstacles. The speed was so fast that at maximum, the FFA could allow movements beyond the speed of sound. The only drawback for this godly weapon was the immense requirements for wearing the FFA. In the entirety of the U.N army, only 13 individuals were allowed to wear them. The requirements involved having a body capable of dealing with physical stress. This meant that the wearer's body should be strong enough to withstand the immense pressure and stress that accompanies the humanly impossible movements. The second requirement was even more impossible than the first. A gun was aimed at Death Tide. After seeing how this nimble lone soldier evaded all incoming bullets, the gunman decided to shoot at a closer range. Death Tide was still busy dismembering several soldiers and did not see the encroaching enemy. Without hesitation, the trigger was pulled. Bang! As the bullet exited the barrel of the gun and as the sound waves vibrated out, possessing abilities that far exceeded human capacity, sight, vision, hearing, and even smell for an inhuman hero like the Death Tide. This attack was extremely trivial. Milliseconds meant nothing, and the Death Tide immediately reacted and evaded the bullet according to the position he heard the shot and the faint vibrations he felt. Unlike normal humans, the general had a superior hearing which allowed him to hear things immediately. It was as if his ears were more than 20 meters from his current position. Much more could be said of his senses. The very triggering of the gun was felt by this general. He didn't need to see where his shooter was. Seeker gave a quick spin to evade the bullet, and upon the execution of the full circle, the sword was slashed. The sound of the gunshot hadn't even echoed throughout the room, and the gunman was already sliced into 2 halves. The second requirement of the FFA? At a minimum, an unlocking of at least 48% of the brain. A simple task for an elite soldier like Death Tide. Regarding his current unlocking, General Seeker, the Death Tide Carlean had a recorded reach of up to 74% brain unlocking. Chapter 2. Full Divide. A single compartment of the bombing would be as large as a football stadium, and the number of compartments that the bombing had were over 30. Yet despite the large size and how each compartment was a maze that leads to other compartments, Death Tide was easily dashing and killing as if he knew exactly where he was going. The soldiers were in a panic. The speed of Death Tide was unmatched. Even before the soldiers of the next compartment became ready for the threat, Death Tide would already dive right in and kill everyone. As his killing spree continued, Death Tide finally reached the compartment he was looking for. Sector 19 was the target for the Chimera Squadron. Gunshots and explosions could be heard as the battle ensued. But this time the soldiers expecting Death Tide were ready. Dozens of soldiers were holed up and took a position on the hallways of the compartment, waiting for any moving objects to intercept them. They no longer valued the threat of the foreign squadron, who has been moving in this compartment. A bigger threat approached, but their wariness was useless. All they ever saw was a blur. Before they even heard the loud sounds of a jet throttling towards them, half of them were already dead. Alarms were heard in the halls of Sector 19. The soldiers had to ensure that Death Tide and Chimera Squadron would not meet. All soldiers were instructed to stay alive and do their best to kill Seeker. Following the conflicting instructions, The soldiers ignored the squadron currently holed up in the star chamber and focused on the fast and deadly flash that left halved body parts on its wake. An expressionless woman with black hair stood over the dead bodies of the soldiers in the star chamber. She wore no armor like the other soldiers, but wore a suit similar to General Carlean. A blue ring also glowed occasionally as Zera emotionlessly continued to move forward, shooting at the corridors just in time to kill the appearing soldiers. The Chimera Squadron's landing was a disaster. Who would have thought that the compartment where their dropship crashed would hold a number of soldiers? Of the 9 soldiers in the dropship, only 5 remained. Zera and another female soldier reached their positions and started to guard the entrance while the rest scrambled to start their mission. "Is he here yet?" a soldier asked as he started reconfiguring the settings of the control panel in one of the machines. "Based on the enemy's screams, I'd say he should be here in a few minutes at most. Hansen, please tend to your wounds." Zera still displayed no emotion even as she comforted the wounded soldier. The commander in charge of their squad continued to pump the remaining liquid extract into the storage tanks. "What was the success rate of this operation?" a female soldier asked. Her gun was steady, but the finger holding the trigger was shaking noticeably. No one responded to the question asked. A shadow was seen on the edge of the corridor, causing her hand to grip tightly with her hand, barely pulling the trigger. "Hold your fire. I think it's the general," Zera coldly remarked. "Keep your cool, Hansen. It's me." The voice spoke from the corridor. Hansen sighed in relief as her hands started to tremble nonstop. She dropped her guard and tears were slowly streaming from her eyes. Seeker entered the room and patted Hansen's shoulder. The original synthetic suit was now full of blood splatters. Obviously, none of it was Seeker's. "Good work, Hansen." Seeker looked at the remaining team and frowned. "You sure had it rough. The enemy's numbers should have withered down. When I started moving independently, they focused on trying to kill me." "Make your report, Commander." "Sir, we've successfully adjusted this binding system. That's 1 compartment down and 1 more to go." After making the last adjustments, the commander immediately retrieved his gun and waited for orders. "Zera, what should be the enemy's next movements based on the probabilities?" the general asked immediately. "Assuming they know of your identity, which is about 97%, I would either isolate this compartment from the other sectors or maximize my forces to eliminate you. Looking at the state of this compartment, I'd say they're going for the latter." "Just as I thought," the general concluded. "Commander Jim, I will lead the way. We have to make it look like we're headed for the main bridge. Take your forces and follow my path. Once you configure the next compartment hole upon any room and wait for evacuation, I'll continue towards the center. You guys should meet less resistance if I leave a blood trail. The more we can reconfigure, the higher the chances our mission succeeds. You should have more than enough to adjust at least 1 more, right?" Not waiting for the team's response, Seeker immediately charged out. Commander Jim and his team immediately set out to follow the general. Zera's blue light flickered. "I hope this won't be the last time we see each other, Zeke." The general smiled as he heard this. A calm smile could be seen on his face as he was charging off into the next rooms. "You know, for a pile of circuits, you weren't half bad as Zera." The main bridge of the Balmung no longer cared at the battles over the Earth's atmosphere. Everyone's attention was on their ship's live video feeds. Despite the various reports about the many soldiers commandeering the different rooms in various compartments of the Balmung, all eyes were focused on what only appeared to be a passing blur and the dead soldiers that were left behind. "We've confirmed it," General Seeker Carlean of the U.N. Army. "It's really him, sir," a soldier on the bridge reported. "Looks like the UN is really risking a lot." Compartmentalize Sectors 7, 16, and 18. Have all the soldiers in Sectors 9 to 12 converge on Carlean's position, the captain immediately ordered. "Sir, several dropships with the same bullet-like hull are approaching," another soldier cried to the captain. "Huh," the captain scoffed. "So they plan to take control of our ship. Seems practical. They are undermanned and dwindling in numbers. They take this ship and do a kamikaze-style attack to another orbital ship," the captain murmured as he turned to the many video feeds and focused on the ones which showed Carlean. Once a majority of the soldiers in Sectors 9 to 12 are at Carlean's sector, initiate full divide. "We must not let any more soldiers board the Balmung," the captain thundered. "Sir, Sectors 26 and 32 have all reported opposition. Our forces are on retreat towards the bridge." "Have all forces of that sector retreat to the bridge." I want the full divide to be ready in the next minute. Carlean is after us. They plan to take control of this ship. The blueprints of the bombing has been compromised. The captain concluded coldly. Despite his calm composure, the captain could not help but shudder at the sight of Seeker dashing from one camera to another. The battle continued in the various compartments of the bombing. The lone soldier Carlean couldn't be stopped. Zara's company continued to pass through the halls. As Carlean predicted, there were no more enemies on their path. All the non-combatant personnel had already evacuated. Then the tremors began. This is it. The divide has begun. The bait worked. Commander Jim grinned. Let's not make the general's actions fall in vain. Let's complete the configuration to this compartment. Zara responded coldly. The stellar war that occurred over the Earth's atmosphere took a sudden change of flow. In the center of those battle was a large spherical spaceship. It was about 7 kilometers in diameter and could even be mistaken for a miniature moon. Several ships which initially were on the offense took a sudden turn and started defending this Gigas-class orbiter known as the bombing. The approaching dropships with bullet-shaped bows flew with immense speed. Guarding them was an escort of the U.N. Army's stellar-capable jets, the Spirits. The stellar battle did little to slow the dropships, as it seemed that these dropship pilots didn't fear death. The bombing then executed full divide. The bombing started to disassemble. The compartments were of different shapes and sizes appeared to be getting detached. As the dividing occurred, a miniature, star-like energy could be found on what was once the center of the bombing. The various parts and pieces of the bombing were connected by electric-like dark blue energy and maintained the positions of each block as if it were planets orbiting a star. Despite what appeared to be a chaotic rotation, none of the blocks collided with each other as each rotated. Inside of the floating compartment that was once Sector 9, Seeker Carlean stood amidst the dead soldiers. With the blue ring glowing in steady blue, Seeker continued to send mental signals and suddenly zoomed out of sight as he evaded and hid from the different gunshots. The number was just too many to handle. Yet despite the hopeless situation of being cornered to a small room, there was a smile in Seeker's face. He then sent a mental command to all squads. Full divide confirmed. Begin operation. Chapter 3. Mission Star Killer. The stellar wars intensified in space. The full divide allowed evasive maneuvers for the compartments, minimizing the number of dropships that could penetrate to the different compartments. Have the fleet focus on defending the bombing, the captain ordered. Soon he stared in frustration at the one monitor most of the crew drew their attention to. The thin frame of Seeker Carlean stood confidently amidst the dead bodies and burning metals. Seeker Carlean's right arm was fractured. The last battle's final seconds ended in what looked like a blur with Carlean on the winning end. The blue ring started glowing again. This is it, boys. We are about to find out if our intel's right or we die for nothing. Seeker broadcasted his message to all link-accomplished soldiers. Squadrons, in 3, 2, 1. Initiate. Seeker commanded. All link-accomplished soldiers flipped the switch at the same time. At a push of the buttons, various mechanisms installed on the engines in the different compartments of the bombing began to light up. The star energy that held all the compartments together started to tremble. What's happening? The captain panicked. The pilots of the bombing quickly checked all system settings in an attempt to understand the anomaly occurring. On the compartments which the different squads managed to reconfigure, the electrical energy which connected the compartment to the star energy slowly turned red in color. Of the 34 compartments, a total of 16 compartments were configured. The tremors that rang out on all compartments started increasing. The movement of the star energy and the orbit of the compartments of the bombing were now getting out of order. Compartments started to crash with one another at the distortion of the star energy. In the central sector, Seeker started dashing and running around the compartment trying to keep his balance. The compartments were in chaos and all on board the bombing struggled to keep a good footing. Dropships, initiate pickup, squadron send your pings. Seeker commanded as he dashed towards the nearest window to observe the situation outside. Several dropships, which seemed to be zooming in confusion then, started to dash at specific areas of the bombing. The dropships penetrated through the thick metal and then stabilized the hole which it generated. The surviving members of the different squadrons immediately boarded the ships. We did it, and we're alive. Suarez rejoiced. Commander, the dropship has arrived. We are about to detach and head back home. A report came in. Seeker stood with a grim expression as he saw the state of the star energy. It's not enough. Seeker frowned. A mental response spoke back. General, the star core is slowly increasing in density and energy. By the looks of it, our mission is a success. The speed, that's the problem. The rate of its increase is too slow. If some of the compartments detach themselves from the star core, our mission will fail. The general sent back angrily. Boom. A sudden crash on the central compartment was felt. A dropship had rammed through the compartment. The bullet-like funnel in its front pierced through the walls, but immediately, several panels expanded, locking the gaps created from the crash. The pressure in the room immediately stabilized. General, I'm here to pick you up. A mental message spoke directly to Seeker. Seeker was deep in thought at this point. For a human with an unlocking of 70%, it was rare for him to have paused and thought. General, the mental message shouted once again. Fish, detach from my compartment. Don't pick me up, Seeker ordered solemnly. What? Various mental messages immediately cried in Seeker's thoughts. Listen up, everyone. Every second count at this point. If any compartments disconnect themselves from the star energy, the mission will fail. My 4-force accelerator is designed as a miniature model of star energy. In theory, I can detonate the FFA energy in the core if I undo the compression on each of the FFA. The energy would be similar to having an additional 4 compartments compartmentalize. I may even immediately overload the energy. It should cause enough increase in the star core to accomplish the mission. Every second count. This is my last order. I can only allow 30 seconds before I make my jump. Ensure that you are in space at 15 seconds. No questions. Seeker's tone was firm and decisive. No mental messages were sent back to Seeker. A few seconds since the last message, the dropship piloted by Fish suddenly detached itself from the central compartment. Good. Seeker smiled. He was receiving mental messages from all the surviving teams. Griffin, Chimera, Basilisk, Wyvern, Phoenix, and even his own team reported having successfully boarded the escape dropships which have returned. A general could never ask for such a decisive and trusting team such as you. Seeker sent his message with tears in his eyes. Zeke, Zara sent back. Zara, protect our home. Seeker sent as he dashed towards a door. A mask suddenly covered Seeker's face as he clicked on a small button near his neck. Oxygen was then released. Once he was a foot away from the door, Seeker stopped. Behind this door was the hole left by the dropship's penetration. Seeker banged the hilt of his sword, pushing the button of the door. As the door opened, Seeker was sucked in by the immense change of pressure. As he was sucked out in space, he engaged the 4-force accelerator and he flew towards the star energy which held all of the Bombung's compartment. Seeker tinkered with his suit, and the dark blue blast emitted by the 4-force accelerator started turning to a shade of red. When he made the jump, all the dropships were already fleeing from the Bombung. Seeker closed his eyes as he neared the electrical energy. The burst of the 4-force accelerator increased to the maximum, and right before Seeker collided with the electrical energy, he smiled. Thank you. A short and simple mental message was sent. The moment Seeker collided with the electrical energy holding Sector 9, he was immediately sucked in towards the core of the energy holding the Bombung's parts. A miniature red explosion could be seen, and the star energy immediately gave a brighter shade of red. The trembling throughout the Bombung's compartments increased. The compartments started to merge into the star energy, as if something was sucking everything towards the center. But before all the compartments could merge in the center, boom, the star energy exploded. A yellow-green-like flame rushed out, incinerating everything in its path. The shockwave was so immense that the other Gigas-class orbiters nearby were shaken by the shockwave. All the stellar-capable jets of the UN Army pushed their ship's speed to the max Mach speed it could manage. Because of the sudden shockwave which shook almost all ships, only the UN armies were prepared to get away from the massive flames that continued to envelop the space. The Gigas-class orbiters could only sit and watch as the raging blaze approached and disintegrated them. Some of the U.N's army's stellar-capable ships was also erased from existence, but the losses from this friendly fire was far outweighed by the gain. The entire orbital fleet was wiped out of existence. As stellar-capable jets of the UN's surviving fleet returned to Earth's atmosphere, the whole world was in celebration. They now had achieved peace for the next months, or maybe even years to come. Humanity had hope once more. Earth now has more time to prepare and fight for the next battle. But no sound of victory was heard in the Myth Squadron dropships returning to Earth. For them, this was a Pyrrhic victory. They won the war but lost their general. Mission Star Killer, codenamed Supernova, successful. Victory attributed to the brave sacrifice of the six-star general, Stellar General Seeker Carlean. Chapter 4. Charles Lindmet. Seeker Carlean sat down with eyes that could shut tight at any moment. His teacher was not making the harsh and boring lesson any easier to learn. He stared at the board and tried to force his eyelids to open as wide as it can. How can any normal 16-year-old manage to fight this unassailable battle? The empowering force of drowsiness was unrelenting. The rest of the class didn't seem to face this problem. Obviously, they were not caught up by the mysterious powers that have ensnared Seeker's mind. This was witchcraft. Something unearthly was forcing Seeker's eyes to close, and the call of dreams sounded so seductive. As his consciousness started fading, Seeker then heard his own voice speaking. Thanks. As the voice faded, a vast amount of images now erupted in Seeker's mind. Awe, an immense pain awakened Seeker from his drowsy state. He felt as if his brain was expanding and that something was going to explode in his mind. Seeker fell from his seat and struggled in pain, shouting and flailing. The professor teaching the class was shocked and immediately rushed to Seeker. The nearby students started panicking at Seeker's sudden episode. Seeker. Various voices called out to Seeker. But Seeker could not hear the voices in the room as the voices in his head were far more powerful and loud. Seeker lost all sense of balance, and his awareness started fading. Finally, the immense thrashing started to lessen as Seeker's consciousness faded off towards his dream. The moment Seeker's eyes opened, he immediately sprang up. The sudden awakening shocked the people in the room. Seeker's mother immediately hugged the panicking Seeker. Seeker was gasping for his breath and started looking around the room with a confused face. A hospital? Seeker asked. His voice was trembling and his body could not stop from shaking. Zeke, you're in the hospital. It's okay now. It's okay. His mom hugged him as tears that were yet to dry continued to pour out from her eyes. What happened, Zeke? His dad was more firm than his mom. Chris Carlean sat by the bed and gave a worried look towards Seeker. His eyes were filled with relief seeing that his son was all right. Seeker didn't know what to say. He just woke up and couldn't remember the details of his pain. I'm not sure. All I remembered was, Seeker began to murmur. Grace finally parted her hug from Seeker. The memories he saw started to change. A vast amount of memories started to jumble up as he pushed to recall the facts. The last thing he could remember was being in class, struggling to keep his consciousness awake. But the last thing he also remembered was the FFA's ignition and how it successfully merged towards the core of the star energy, ensuring the success of his mission. Seeker stared at his parents and didn't know what to say. He looked deeply at his dad and towards his mom. The blue eyes of his dad and the almond eyes of his mom were the only things he stared at. Seeker's panicked expression started to slowly disappear as a confused look began to surface. Then a warm and happy smile emerged. He immediately hugged his parents. I missed you guys, Seeker cried. I was so scared. Chris and Grace comforted their poor child and hugged him even tighter. Chris started telling odd jokes to make Seeker more relaxed. Amidst the odd jokes and heartwarming sentiments, Seeker appeared to have recalled something. Zeke? Grace asked at Seeker, who seemed to have suddenly fallen into a trance. Mom, I'm very tired, Seeker spoke as he looked at his mom and dad. Chris and Grace glanced at each other. Okay, you need to rest now. Grace gave Seeker a hug and kissed Seeker's forehead. Seeker laid in his bed and seemed to be trying to sleep. Mr. and Mrs. Carlean? A voice interrupted from beyond the door. It must be the doctor. Chris hurriedly opened the door. A tall man in a long white coat stood. His gaze was stern, his beard wild. He was like a war hero in a doctor's outfit. Dr. Lindmet? Grace exclaimed. The name awakened Seeker. He immediately sat up to stare at the unfamiliar doctor. Seeker was sure. He was familiar with this doctor that he has never met in his entire life. I'm sorry to disturb you. Dr. Platt already reviewed the MRI results and asked me to take a look at the patient. No problem at all, doctor. Grace excitedly agreed. Grace, you know Dr. Lindmet. He's been over the news these past few weeks. A celebrity doctor. Well, I wouldn't claim to be a celebrity doctor. Lindmet chuckled. I came here and requested to take over in caring for Seeker Carlean. If that's all right with you, of course. No additional charges will be given for my services. You will still be paying the same fee as you did with Dr. Platt. The pleasure is ours. Chris, this is the doctor who was all over the news. The famous neurological doctor who managed to cure Alzheimer's. The news shocked Chris. Seeker, however, stared in even more confusion. How did he already know this? Well, how can we say no to such a generous offer? Chris smiled. Now that I don't need to introduce myself, Seeker, I will now be your doctor and I will be sure to put to use 100% of my capabilities to ensure that I'll get back to my 100% right? I'm relieved to be in your hands, Charles. Seeker interrupted. Charles Lindmit was surprised. Grace gave Seeker a peculiar look. Zeke, he's Dr. Charles. Show some respect. Haha. It's all right, Mrs. Grace. Looks like little Zeke here has heard of me. Surprisingly, he even knows of my catchphrases. Zeke started to hold his head in agony again. I'm sorry, but I'm very uncomfortable at how crowded this place is. My head's starting to throb again. All right. Mr. and Mrs. Carlean, would you mind if I spend some time with Zeke? I know that it's getting late and that Zeke is tired, but his case requires a bit of haste on my part. If it's also all right with you, Zeke. No problem at all, Doctor. Grace and Chris immediately left the room, leaving the two alone. So, right on to business then. Seeker, as you already dashed. Dr. Charles, I'd like to take a little test if you don't mind. It's related to my current state and might even help you on a possible plight you have regarding a neuroalteration study you might be doing. Charles was shocked to hear Seeker's claims. How did you know about my study? Who daff? Relax, Charles. I'm just a kid with an intense migraine. However, if what you'll help me and it proves my assumption, then I guess I won't be an ordinary kid with a migraine. Charles stood there wondering what the peculiar teenager was talking about. I'm not sure if I follow. Who are you and daff? Charles, please. I am as confused as you are. I don't believe what my mind is telling me. But so far, it has proven to be true. How did I know you when I've never met you? Why am I so familiar with your expressions, your habits, your favorites? Why do I possess knowledge which exceeds what I should have? Help me. Seeker wasn't even looking at Charles, but continued massaging his temple. Charles didn't know how to respond. All right, let's make this simple, Seeker finally decided. He continued to massage his head, but gazed straight to Charles. Flip a coin and catch it. I'll call what it is the moment it lands. Try to be quick, though, and not make me know what the result was. Charles stared in confusion. But if Seeker knew something about the neural alteration project, he had to humor the teen. Charles rummaged on his pocket and took out a coin. He stared at Seeker, waiting for any signal. Seeker gave a casual nod as he continued to massage his temples. He didn't look as interested as he should. Charles flipped the coin and caught the coin with his right hand. Tails, Seeker said casually. Charles opened his palm and found the side which displayed the proud Sidian symbol. This was, of course, the tails of the coin. Chapter 5. The Unlocking. Am I right? Seeker inquired. Charles was sure that Seeker wasn't paying attention to the coin as he seemed to be more concerned of massaging his head. Charles nodded back to confirm. Let's keep at it until I make a mistake. Charles and Seeker continued to play the game. Seeker called all coin flips correctly. He was simply glancing at Charles the exact moment he would catch the coin in his palm. The more they did it, the more amazed Charles was. All right, I have to ask, how do you do it? Charles asked at the 11th coin flip. Seeker finally stopped massaging his head and gave a sigh. Through a successful application of your neural alteration theory, my brains are stronger than most. I can control the time of how I perceive things. I would estimate that I can turn 10 milliseconds to feel like 1 second. I could clearly see how the coin would land. Not a magic trick, Doctor. This was pure perception. Charles was shocked at those words. This was one of the theoretical results of his study. The brain is capable of being upgraded. Who exactly are you? How did you end up with that migraine? Do you realize what you just said? Calm down, Charles. Oh, sorry, Dr. Charles. My memories are used to calling you Charles. Seeker smirked. Charles ignored Seeker and continued questioning Seeker, and later applied a more aggressive tone as Seeker was ignoring him. In fact, it appeared that Seeker was lost in thoughts. Seeker. Charles grabbed hold of Seeker. He glared angrily at Seeker. There was a kid claiming to have the totality of his current life's work. Has the government been spying on him? Charles lost his patient and calm smile, which he presents to the public. Now here he was holding and shaking a kid who just suffered an intense migraine that left him in the hospital. Tell me, doctor, how far has your neural alteration research progressed? Now that you discovered the cure for Alzheimer's, you should have at least started on brain regeneration, right? Obviously, you read my research. You look pretty smart for a kid, but unless you tell me what I want to know now, you better give me a straight answer, Charles demanded. I haven't read your works, doctor. I am very versed at it since you applied this to me, Seeker remarked. What? Technically, you will apply it to me. I don't understand how, but I believed I've already undergone an unlocking. Unlocking? Seeker stared at Charles with a surprised expression. This was his first expression other than the tired and annoyed look he once had. Ugh. It's a term you coined to describe the current capacity a person's brain can do. A term? What are you talking about? Unlocking the extent of how a person can use his brain. To be precise, the percentage of its uses. What? You mean that 10% brain using theory? Kid, I'm a neurosurgeon. One of the best this world has to offer. And I know that 10% brain crap was just some stupid theory used as a plot for an aged-old movie. Seeker started laughing. This angered Charles even more. Why are you laughing? Charles demanded. Seeker tossed an apple towards Charles. Charles instinctively caught it. What is this? An apple a day crap? The angry Charles was about to toss the apple in the trash when Seeker interrupted him. How many percent of your muscles did you use, doctor? To be precise, if 100% is the total amount of force your right arm can possibly perform, what was the percentage of force did you use to catch the apple? Charles paused for a bit. He was confused by Seeker's question. I don't know. 5%? I don't care what dash. This is what I meant, doctor. Not the percentage of the parts that the brain use, but the percentage of the extent, the effort, if you will, that the brain can use. The whole not using 10% of your brain is proven to be false. But the question is, how strong can a brain work? Charles was stunned at this statement. This was something he had been studying and researching on. The brain, like any muscle, can exert a percentage of its true capability. Think of computers. Does it always run at its 100%? Seeker asked casually. He was now in a relaxed mood and decided to rest his head on the bed's pillow. Well, no. Unless you run a program that demands more memory, and to go beyond this on an active basis is if you overclock it. The brain as a muscle is also capable of this. It can be forced to work harder. Of course, like any muscle, overworking it could result in a strain, which is why the body defaults its usage to at least 7 to 10% like an ordinary computer. Sooner or later, you will prove this to the world. Pushing the brain's capacity to work harder is possible. It will explain the phenomenon of why people experience life reviews near their moments of death, tachypsychia, and even those alleged out-of-body experiences. I will prove? What are you getting at? It looks like your research hasn't gone this far yet. Then let me point you in the right direction. Tachypsychia, the phenomenon where people claim time has slowed down. On what occasion do those generally happen? Life-threatening situations. Other than that, athletes, martial artists, or basically anyone doing extreme sports claim to have these moments. At that point, the brain functioned beyond its 10% norm. All those whom you mentioned encountered extreme stimulants or reasons which led them to push the percentage of their brain usage. The life review, where people claim that their life flashed before their eyes, is another experience caused by their brain functioning beyond the 10% norm. During their life-threatening episodes, they quickly thought about their past. But due to their brain being in overclocked mode, they remembered far too many things that they should have. Charles was silent. He was excited. Looks like his research was right. And the OB? How can out-of-body experience fall into the mix of all these? An overclocked brain heightens the senses. Sound, taste, and smell combined with a heightened sense of touch are easily converted into a totally different way of perceiving the world. At that point, their perception was so strong that they thought their spirit was looking from above. But the truth, the totality of their senses, just allowed them to see things perfectly even when their eyes were closed. Charles was silent once again. What if this kid does indeed have what he is claiming to have? So you have unlocked how many percent of your brain? Seeker gazed towards the ceiling, contemplating the question. I'd guess I'm at the unbecoming stage. My unlocking should be around 15 to 18% based on the symptoms I'm displaying. Unbecoming? What symptoms? Millisecond perception, advanced recall, heightened senses, improved motor reaction, and, yeah, light migraines. You call your migraines light? You passed out. I meant now. Me having that episode was caused by a different reason. Unless that happened again, I'm confident I won't be having those fainting episodes anymore. Seeker gave another exasperated look to Charles. What happens beyond this unbecoming phase? Above it is the inhuman stage. Symptoms include a finer millisecond perception, advanced motor reaction, inhuman senses, and total recall. So no more migraines? Charles joked. The brain would be fried if a person maintains inhuman unlocking at full capacity for more than 5 minutes. You need a stronger brain to maintain that stage. Charles was shocked at Seeker's claims. As for the next stages, ranked hero and world champion, we'd have to save it for next time. I wouldn't want to give all the secrets away to your doctor. I think telling you what you will soon discover would be detrimental to your potential. It's best if you find the answers yourself. Again, I'm just pointing you in the right direction. Seeker smirked and started relaxing. I think I slept 10 hours yesterday. But at the same time, my memory tells me that I haven't slept that long in nearly 4 years. Funny how things turn out. Chapter 6. A New Game Plus. Seeker paced towards his classroom. Everyone passed by Seeker, not paying heed to this familiar figure. Seeker was a regular student who studied, laughed, played hooky at times, tried and failed at flirting with the hottest girls in school. No known achievements, no great contributions to society, not even a name on the school papers for any notable accomplishments and comical adventures. He didn't even join any clubs, but would head home immediately or hang out with his dear friends. The average of the average. That was Seeker Carlean. Seek, you all right? What happened? Lynn Peters ran towards Seeker. He was a tall, tanned young man with jet black hair. His head was a near-perfect circular shape, and adding to his innocent look, one would mistake him to be related to Troll. His tall and huge frame, adding to his clumsy and slightly awkward movements, made his worried dash a comical scene. I'm fine. Sheesh. Don't do that in public. It's really embarrassing. Seeker laughed, but his heart warmed up seeing this concerned giant. Well, you should have seen yourself. You look like one of those demons-possessed people in the movies, screaming so loud and your eyes were almost popping out. As Lind approached, Seeker could see the tears in his eyes. I'm all right now, Seeker comforted. You really had me worried there, Seek. You were screaming some weird stuff the other day. We thought you really lost it. Lind walked at Seeker's pace, slowly adjusting his long steps. Really? Couldn't remember much of what I was shouting. I just remembered the pain. Seeker gave a casual smile. Well, I couldn't remember all of it. I was too busy holding you down and screaming as well. Lind laughed. But from what I heard after you were sent to the hospital, you were screaming strange things. The pair walked onwards towards the room. Lind continued to bombard Seeker with questions, and Seeker kept repeating the fact that he remembered nothing. As they entered, the group was immediately met with applause. There gathered in the room were Seeker's classmates. The senior class that Seeker was assigned was not a high-ranking class. Their school grouped students according to their academic performances and grades per year level. Though Seeker's class weren't as dreadful as the regulars' ranked classes, the rising rank was not as prestigious as the royal rank. Devoid of extreme talents and extreme dullness, life was carefree and easy in the rising rank. Students of this class have no outlying students who were smart and so dull. Everyone accepted their grades and would always perform for the sake of passing. From school plays, performances, and studies, their culture was a very happy-go-lucky group. Congratulations on recovering, Seek. Meryl clapped as she paced towards Seeker. Meryl's long braided hair swung as she walked towards and gave Seeker a meaningful hug, after which she began to scan him, trying to find any defects or surgical scars. Meryl was a bright girl with an innocent smile. She had a well-rounded face and white skin. She smiled as she looked with worried eyes to her dear friend. I'm fine, Meryl. Seeker playfully patted her braided head. Fine? Some of us thought you were possessed by a demon. You started screaming and flailing and even shouted something about being on fire. Was a demon trying to drag you to hell? Meryl grumpily argued. Seeker laughed. No such incident. I promise you. Anyways, I'm glad I'm back with you guys. Seeker stared dearly at his two friends. Lind and Meryl were his two best friends. Lind was his awkward compatriot who would always be there no matter what, and Meryl his beloved little older sister, who would berate them of their stupidity, but always join in to either help them get out of trouble and occasionally put them into deeper trouble. The class was now bombarding Seeker with many questions. Seeker casually addressed all concerns from his classmates. As he talked with them, tears would unexpectedly gather in his eyes. Meryl stared at Lind in the wonder of what was happening. Seeker later sat down at his seat as the bell rung. Meryl and Lind sat next to Seeker. As the teacher went in, life in the rising 3B class began. The class paid the usual non-committal attitude it had. Seeker was, however, still lost in thoughts. I can't believe that I would be here once more. The emotions started surging and Seeker's eyes were tearing up once more. He confirmed his existence, his memory, and other unbelievable things last night. He isn't dreaming. He isn't dead. He is alive. Back to his junior years at the West Philpangea High, the emotions that he felt was one of both joy and relief. He could be with his friends, talk with his parents, and enjoy the fact that the remaining 3/4 of the earth is habitable and not a heaping wasteland or a metal graveyard. It felt like an impossible dream. Seek? Meryl called out. You okay? Are you crying? Meryl noticed the teary-eyed Seeker. I'm okay, Meryl. It's just that ever since the attack my head's been throbbing a bit every now and then. Oh my. You sure it's all right to go to school? What if the attack happens again? Lind gave an alarmed stare at Meryl and Seeker. Mr. Carlean, the teacher suddenly barked. Miss Cipral called out. Alian Cipral was fiery hot, and the white woman who, despite her very alluring beauty, was still single. Her strict military upbringing paired with the fact that her father takes her wherever he is assigned made Alian's career a very diverse one. It is not an excuse for you to idle around in my class, even if you had a little headache episode. If you wish to fake another panic attack, do so in another class, because if you do it again, I will throw you out. The class was silent. Even though Meryl and Lind wanted to pound this general's daughters with smart rebuttals, they knew not to awaken this beast. Seeker merely stared at the teacher. His eyes could not hide the immense hatred he felt towards this wretched beast clothed in womanly splendor. Seeker, however, chose to give a wry smile and nodded to the teacher. Alian went back to her lessons. Forget about her, Zeke, Lind whispered. Want to go to my place later? Guess what? I booked an order for our favorite game, and I finally got it. The sequel to Piercing, Edge. Later we will be in the action-packed The World of Piercing, Bullet. My game data from Edge is ready to go. I just can't wait to play a new game plus on Bullet. Depending on your completion rate to the previous game, you would be rewarded with several unlocked skills and even ammunition. This game, we already know what not to waste and what to prepare for. Not to mention, if we manage to complete several secret tasks from Piercing Edge, we can meet secret characters who will help us with more stuff. A new game plus, huh? Seeker smiled. I guess this is what it is. This should make the game easier and possibly 100 times harder. What? Lind was lost in Seeker's response. As you said, Lind, we have more unlocked skills than our first game. We have more ammunition, a lot of time for preparations, and even secret characters. I'm excited too. Let's play it. Seeker's smile grew bigger. The new game plus da. Chapter 7. The Aragarians. Where are you taking us, Zeke? Meryl had a confused look as Seeker was navigating them into an unknown lot around a complex they have never been to. I told you, we'll have our own personal hangout space. Beats hanging about in the school grounds. But why would your uncle give this to you? Lind gave a confused stare. The trio arrived at a duplex building. Seeker went up and rang the doorbell and waited. Seeker, a voice called out. The door opened to reveal a tall, brutish, and bearded man who you would never mistake for a doctor. Charles, nice place you got here. Seeker smiled at Charles. Only Charles could see the devil behind the grin. Dr. Charles Lindmet, Meryl and Lind chorused. And this must be Meryl and Lind. I've heard about you from my dear nephew. Zeke, you're related to him? A surprised cry of Lind voiced over. Seeker gave a quick nod to affirm. Anyways, come inside. I got the place ready for you. Charles chuckled over the innocence of Seeker's friends. Who would expect this peculiar, unbecoming human to have such normal teenage friends? The duplex offered a well-decorated, minimalistic space with a surprisingly spacious area that hosted all the necessary gym equipment for a bodybuilder. There were also bars and boxes that appeared to be used for parkour or gymnastics. A lounge area was seen on the second floor of the building. The party headed over to the second floor, and an array of snacks and drinks awaited them. A high-quality gaming computer was available with a huge screen TV used as its monitor. Lind nearly drooled at the sight of the computer's setup. This was a realm that casual gamers like him could never reach. Not bad, Doctor. Seeker gave a smile, impressed at the hospitality and preparation made for them. Anything for my dear nephew. Charles melancholically smiled back. What does it take to truly impress this little rascal? I wish to speak with my dear nephew privately. Just the ground rules to this little hideout of yours. Charles walked downstairs, and Seeker followed. I hope this is to your liking. This is all the equipments that should be going to MY Gym. Because of this, I probably won't open the gym until the end of the year. A rich guy like you? I'm sure you have no sponsors or partners to let down. Seeker chuckled. All right, Seeker. This time I want the truth. I took a look at the file you compiled last night. Adding to what I can see at the various test results of your brain, I'm inclined to believe that you are indeed on that unbecoming stage. But what I want to know is, who are you exactly? The level of scientific technologies listed on that rough file looked like it was a century ahead in the future. I've had my guesses, and all I could think of is that you are an alien stuck on this planet. I'm prepared to believe anything, so tell me. Looks like the file convinced you. Seeker gave a relaxed smile. This makes things easier to explain. So what do you think of the draft I made for the thought transmitter? That was pure science fiction. At least that's what I would say yesterday. But looking at the other files you sent me, if the unlocking is possible, then the thought transmitter should also be plausible. But what I'm more concerned about is who you are than the inventions you have. Answer that first, and I can trust whatever you say afterward. The reason I asked you about the thought transmitter is that it might explain who I am. I am Seeker Carlean, born and raised in New Pangaea town of the Philpangaea Islands of the A.U Nations. 15 years of age, and all the data you might have gathered from me ought to be true. However, I am also Seeker Carlean of the 13th Brigade, promoted to be General of the Stellar Armies. A 6-star general by all accounts, and a ranked hero based on the unlocking level. You see, Charles, I am what you might call a reincarnator. A reincarnator? One who has lived life to his dying breath, and by some twist of fate, I reincarnated back to my younger years. Charles gave a scrutinizing stare to Seeker. I was ready for alien life forms, or a secret America experiment, but that was totally unexpected. Seeker laughed. I share your sentiments. It's been 2 whole days, and I still question whether I am real or not. To clarify, I am not exactly a reincarnator, but I inherited the memories of my future self. 5 years from now, humanity will answer an age-old question that they have asked for so long. Are we alone? And the answer is that we are not. Another race of aliens which share the same genetic makeup, biological features, and basically anything that makes us human exist somewhere out there in the stars. They have known our existence for quite some time, but they choose to keep silent and ignore all our calls because they want us to remain ignorant of their existence. An alien race that is exactly like humans? Apparently, we are not the only humans in this universe. Interesting. Another human race. So they aren't as different from as we'd once imagined. Well, at least I was partially right. You are involved in some intergalactic war. Charles gave an intrigued smile. Yes. We of Earth, fighting the invasion of the Aragarians. So what exactly do these Aragarians want? Our planet. You see, they have lived about a couple of 100 years longer than us on a planet bigger than ours. Planet Aragar is similar to Earth in terms of its composition, atmosphere, and so on. They are on the edge of extinction. They have reaped the consequences of their own actions. Global warming in Aragar is reaching critical levels. Pollution made there has nearly halved the average lifespan, and basically all those typical environmental warnings that we've heard are beginning to reach critical levels in their planets. So they're looking for a new home? Either that or a temporary place to move their residents while the planet recovers. but that would take decades or hundreds of years. So they relocate temporarily while the scientist of their planet executes the terraforming plans to help return their planet to a green and livable planet. Of course, these plans would leave their home planet at an uninhabitable place. So they tried to reach out to us and we refused to welcome their people? Kinda rude of us, don't you think? They never asked. If their full population moves to Earth, then they have another problem. I see. This planet ain't big enough for the both of us? Charles realized. Exactly. One has to go. Hence a war will begin in the next 5 years. 5 years? So they'll be arriving within 5 years? No. They will arrive in the 5th year of that war. The war that is to come is a world war on our planet. Charles was lost in thoughts. So we basically destroyed and killed ourselves, and they arrived to reap the rewards? Most likely they instigated the world war. I wouldn't be surprised that they already have their spies on our planet now. The Argarians were very careful. They did their best to minimize the cost of their actions. They promised some world leaders a place in their utopia. With their tech, they could have conquered us. But it would cost them an astronomical amount of resources and a lot of lives. So they made ways for us to be weakened, divided us, made us go against each other. And then they arrived and conquered. So we were at the brink of extinction? Charles gave a grim stare. We were. However, they made a big mistake. Seeker smiled. They underestimated us. They had the technology and the means to kill us, but they weren't willing to spend the cost to easily reach that. They ordered the many nations that allied with them to kill us. But that gave us time. At a turning point, they decided to step in. They had the numbers, they were united, they were many. But that was exactly why they lost. I don't follow. Earthling desperation ushered in a new era for us. When several nations betrayed humanity and us who remained faced extinction, a technology that they couldn't imagine was opened right in our eyes. And you have been looking at that technology all night. Document. The unlocking. Exactly. At the brink of extinction, humans unlocked the last chains that bounded their limitations. The unlocking made men of renown. Warriors that could dive in a war zone and have an army before dying. Heroes that won nations back to humanity. And world champions that saved the Earth multiple times. It was something that even their technology couldn't stop. Charles gulped a mouthful of saliva. What he was looking at was the future of his works. And it was that very research that saved humanity. It's funny how you concern yourself of who I am, Charles. The truth is, my very existence right now of knowing the future is nothing compared to your worth in the future. Chapter 8. The Power of Advanced Recall. Charles was astounded by Seeker's claim. In his palms were the destiny of humanity. His success meant the humanity would have a fighting chance. The boy from the future was indeed as unimportant as him. He would be the man that would change the world and give it weapons to face the enemy. Charles sat down on one of the chairs nearby and pondered deeply. I bet this changes your perspectives in life, right? Seeker laughed. Charles continued to think. Was it all real? Would he be the impetus that would save the future? An uneasy weight fell on his heart. He was someone special in this world, someone who made it the top of his career. But never did he thought that lives would be at stake. Look, a part of me still doesn't believe in all this. Charles stared straight into Seeker's eyes. At times I'm waiting for the camera to come out and surprise me telling me that I've been in some sort of reality TV joke show. I still daff. Did you bring the gun? Seeker impatiently interrupted. Yes, I have it in my holster underneath this coat. The surprised doctor displayed the gun hanging in his holster. Right then, if you still don't believe me, load the gun and shoot me, Seeker commanded unemotionally. Charles shivered at the thought of what Seeker asked. It's the only way to know if I'm telling the truth. You brought your own gun. You have real bullets with you. We are standing in a building you own. So no one else could have prepared anything for a prank, a magic trick, or whatever. Everything is now in your control. If I evade your bullets, would it help you believe? Charles didn't respond. He was surprised at Seeker's sudden offer. It's the only way. Document. Now I already have a blindfold with me. I'll put it on. You walk around me. Oh, and try to be discreet so I won't know where you are. After that, simply announce when you are going to shoot. And after a half a second or so, shoot me. I will evade all bullets. What? You will blindfold yourself? And what do you mean all bullets? You want me to shoot while you are blindfolded? And you want me to do that several times? Are you insane? Charles cried in surprise. Even his big, brutish form seemed to shrink in alarm at Seeker's statements. Well, yeah. After all, you missing the shot would be well within the possibilities. If you shoot me once, shame on me. If you shoot me twice, shame on you, right? Just like the old saying. That's not even close to what the original saying was. Do you think I'm an amateur with guns? And why are you putting on the blindfold? Charles was now screaming at Seeker, who used Charles's moment of hysteric, raving to put on the blindfold. To prove my point. Heightened senses, remember? My response time is fairly quick. And besides, there is something that I forgot to mention regarding my unlocking. I am not just unlocked, but within my mind are the memories of a ranked hero. Because of improved recollection, I can remember things far better than most. How does good memory help in dodging bullets? Charles shouted. Seeker comfortably stood there with the blindfold on. Muscle memory would be the easiest analogy. The human body can react without thinking. When people start practicing to drive, they begin to have to concentrate. They watch which pedal to push, which gears to switch to, and other newbie-like actions. But later, they begin to do it as if it was natural. In basketball or whatever sports, it's the same thing. Even simple actions such as dribbling a basketball require concentration. But soon, because of practice, you develop these skills to the point that you do it without thinking. Because of what I am now, I don't only remember my memories, but to a certain extent, I remembered how I moved in it. So don't worry. Point and shoot document. Seeker stood calmly. I could kill you, Charles suddenly shouted. Lind and Merrill, who were surprised at the sudden shouts, were already eavesdropping. Lind, Merrill, stay where you are. No matter what happens, don't interfere, Seeker shouted. Charles was surprised. He hadn't noticed the two kids. This is insane. This is unlocking, Seeker boldly declared as he raised his two hands like a prophet unveiling the glorious truth. Trust, Doctor. Trust in your work. Trust in the truth and possibilities of the unlocking. And most importantly, trust in me, Seeker declared confidently. Charles slowly stood up. He now had a serious face. He reached for his gun and took a close look at it. He drew it close to his face and started to carefully view the nozzle, the trigger, and even the magazine. This could be the revealer of truth for Charles, or the cause of death for the bold boy who stood with his eyes blindfolded. Merrill and Lynn stood frozen ever since they saw the gun. The development was too strange. Charles slowly walked around Seeker. He immediately took out the silencer that Seeker asked him to bring. He immediately attached it. He aimed the gun. His hands were shivering. Doc dash. Before Merrill could even cry, Seeker shouted as well. Merrill, don't interfere. Just watch and be amazed at my death-defying act dash. Before Seeker could even complete the showman declaration, Charles made his move. Now, it wasn't even half a second later when he started pulling the trigger. The world slowed down in Seeker's perception. An average bullet travels at the speed of 1,700 feet per second. Seeker was only 8 feet away from Charles. It would have been certain death. But even before the trigger was pulled, Seeker already evaded accordingly and immediately removed the blindfold. With his sense, he knew where Charles stood and could even guess where Charles was aiming. The first bullet was fired, and it easily missed. But Charles wasn't finished. Another shot was made after he aimed at Seeker's torso. Seeker saw where he was aiming and dropped his shoulder a bit. The second bullet was fired. It again failed to hit Seeker. Seeker took the time between these passing moments to watch the shell casing of the bullet that was being ejected out as the gun prepared for the next round. Another bullet was fired. This time Seeker didn't move. The bullet simply missed Seeker. To Charles, these few seconds passed by quickly. But the perceptions of those in the unbecoming stage is different. Things can be perceived as fast or slow. And at Seeker's level of concentration, a second could feel like 5. He saw the next aim of Charles. Estimating trajectory to an unbecoming stage user was easy. Adding to that was the profound memories that were somehow maximized by advanced recall to provide him the muscle memory that he didn't have. Seeker grabbed the collar of his shirt and pulled it sideways. The third bullet was fired. Seeker could see the bullet as it flew. Fast, he thought in those milliseconds. The bullet ripped a hole through the shirt that Seeker stretched out. He could feel the pressure and resistance as the bullet passed through. He stared intently at Charles. For a few seconds, he saw Charles not putting pressure on his finger, which was on the trigger. 2 more seconds passed in Seeker's view, and it seemed that Charles didn't plan to continue. So he decided to end this state.
Tie-ins.
Seeker paused a bit. The entire sequence of firing took less than 3 seconds. That was rude. At least you should have made me finish my sentence before shooting. Charles stared in amazement. He quickly approached Seeker with a dumbfounded expression as the bullet hole in his shirt confirmed that the gun he fired was real as with the bullets he used. He ran to the back of the room and checked the bullet marks left by his shootout. He found the places where the bullet penetrated deep into the wall. It wasn't a magic trick. Everything was real, despite how crazy things were. It was as Seeker had said. So I guess I'm going to be a hero. Charles sighed. He couldn't keep the strength to stand. He slid down as he leaned on the wall. Meryl and Lynn stood frozen stiff. The moment they heard the small silenced shots, they knew that something strange has occurred. Okay, now that that's over with, I'm hungry. Let's eat. Charles just stared at Seeker. There was a hint of frustration and wonder at Seeker's unexpected actions. I just shot you 4 times. And your reaction is that you're feeling hungry? My dear doctor, it's precisely because I can dodge bullets that I need to eat. These delicacies won't stay around forever, you know. Seeker grinned mischievously. Chapter 9. The Reincarnator's Tale. Are you going to eat that? Seeker asked Charles as the young boy's hand hovered over the reaming piece of the very greasy back ribs on the table. Lynn, Meryl, and Charles sat down, still unable to completely wrap their heads around what happened. Charles was still shocked on what the future may hold for him. Of course, everybody was silent, not paying attention to Seeker, who comfortably had an extravagant meal. Charles gave a somewhat frustrated stare to Seeker while the 2 remaining teens stared blankly as they were too afraid to ask questions. This doctor just fired 4 rounds of live bullet towards their friend, and their friends managed to easily dodge it. Charles? Anyone? Going once, going twice. Sold to the hungry Seeker Carlean. Seeker didn't hesitate to grab the remaining piece with his bare hands. When was the last time you ate back ribs? Charles asked tiredly. Do you mean in this life or the previous one? Because if it's the latter one, then I guess 7 years? Seeker took the piece and ate it. It was devoid of all forms of class or grace, like a caveman discovering how to eat meat. Seeker's delight in eating this treat was very obvious. Trust me, guys. Hoard and enjoy whatever this world has to offer now. Things are going to be different soon. Well, unless Dr. Lindmit here can make something beyond the impossibilities that lie in my mind. Seeker happily devoured the meal. Charles sighed deeply. So the world as we know it would soon come to an end. Yeah. So get your mind loading, doctor. You are on the right direction now. This should save a few years in your research. And if you do have time, contact all those names you have in that file. Try to convince them to join your team. Charles opened the document that Seeker compiled. The papers contained several suspicious items, such as sketches and drawings of people's faces. Each name would follow drawings, text, and what appeared to be complex calculations. I don't understand most of them. Engineering, physics, mathematics, astroscience, and whatnot. The only things that interested me are all related to biology and anything to do with the unlocking. And the thought transmitter? How far do you think we are to actually recreate them? You mean inventing them? We haven't invented the thought transmitter yet, Seeker. Oh, right. Seeker embarrassedly scratched his head. It all gets fuzzy document. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel that I've literally lived 2 lives. And at some point they just intersected. There is still one thing you haven't explained to the 3 of us. How did you end up here? Charles gave a serious stare at Seeker. This was the most important question that he had. Seeker, however, had a pile of ribs in his mouth. This was more important to him. Actually, can somebody explain everything? Lind finally interrupted. Seeker took out the piece of bone that he was sucking on. Delish. I wonder if there is a way to raise pigs or chickens and stuff. Maybe I should build a farm somewhere. Seeker gazed in wonder. Charles gave up. Seeker was just so into the moment that he didn't care for anything else. Zeke, what's going on? Meryl finally erupted. The gun shooting, the whole talk about some worldwide catastrophe, futuristic inventions, these were all the things that weighed upon Meryl and Lynn's heart. Seeker smiled. I'm sorry, Meryl. Anyways, let me explain what's going on for now. Or rather, would the good doctor explain it? I doubt they'd believe me if I told them. Why not give the man who tried to kill me the opportunity? Charles stared in exasperation. The tale of Charles caused both Lind and Merrill to look stupidly. However, not knowing what else to believe, they seemed flustered but still tried to swallow the hard pill as it was within the context of their previous discussions. So basically Zeke's gone and you're now future Zeke? No, I'm still here, Merrill. Simply put, I remember two lives, mine and my future self. But for the sake of not confusing everyone, let's say I am the collective equal of both of me. The future me is a bit boring, to be honest. Can't blame him though. Earth was destroyed, the internet's gone, and everyone didn't have anything much to do. All there was the battle to survive. Okay, I told them your tale. Now tell me the rest of yours. Charles wasn't patient anymore. Like a true adult, he worried. Fine, let me tell you this reincarnator's tale. Seeker stood up and began his tale. The future is bleak, gentlemen. More than half of the Earth will be our enemies soon. The Aragarians is a species similar to humans. Actually, they are 100% human, from their appearance down to their sex organs. Anyway, they first made contact in a very dramatic way. As Charles said, a world war will soon happen. This war would be different than most of the wars we previously encountered. It was a true world war. Several alliances will be made, but I'll not bore you with the details. I think you should tell us as much as you know, Seeker. We need every single information of this coming world war so dash. The reason that these things are not needed anymore is because I plan to change them. It would be a very boring scenario if I have to go through the historical facts, most of which won't even happen in this timeline. Don't get me wrong, Doctor. I did not come here to save the entire world. Only some of it. The rest could burn for all I care. Seeker's eyes burned with unexplainable passion. His hatred for those nations that abandoned their earthly humanity disgusted him. The room was silent. Charles felt a chilling sensation in his spine, and even the hairs in his forearms were tingling in fear. Oh, sorry. Seeker apologized. Suddenly, the deathly sensation, everyone felt lightened. I really need to keep my feelings in check. You see, the collective me is complicated. I guess you can think of me as having a split personality. Man, future me had one pitiful life. Seeker laughed. Anyways, my point is, most of history will be changed. I won't burn the rest of the world. Maybe just a tiny portion of it? Of course, we will give them the chance to join us. But moving on, the only important history that you need to know is the African and Russian treaty that will shock the world. Africa would rise as a nation with a formidable military background. Our beloved country, or group of countries, would even take a step down in being a superpower. A string of political events will happen, and eventually, Africa and Russia become one nation. Aren't they like several thousand miles away from each other? Oh, don't worry. 10 years from now they wouldn't be. They'd be neighbors. Anyway, they named the future capital of their city Araga. At the end of the war, they had a big ceremony there. Now, this was a big thing. Their alliance and political move to be one nation led to the end of that world war. And on that day, the world watched as a new era of peace began. Or at least they thought. It was at that moment that the aliens arrived. As it turned out, the aliens were behind the rise of Africa. The president of Africa was actually an Aragarian. What? The three shouted together. Think about it. They already look like us and have our exact same biology. So it was easy for them to blend into this world. So there you have it, an entire continent belonging to the Aragarians. The world watched in horror as an alien threat easily conquered two of the biggest superpowers in the future. The ceremony on Aragar was actually an announcement to the world. The spine-chilling sensation once again filled the room. Seeker had an unusually angry glare. The Aragarians only had one thing to say to the whole world. Surrender to our terms or face extinction. Chapter 10. The Time-Traveling Reincarnator. The room was quiet. Lind and Merrill started to look pale. It was difficult to not believe Seeker's tale, as a renowned and respected doctor looked as pale as them. The chilling sensation soon disappeared. Ugh, sorry. It seems that I can't to control it easily. Seeker then resumed his normal happy-go-lucky look. You're the one that's doing that? Charles asked in surprise. One of the more complex things an unlocked person can do. I can emit unique hormones that can cause fear to those nearby. It's complicated. We will discuss that once your research proceeds further. You're kidding, right? Lin found it unbelievable. Aren't we just scared because of your look? Okay then, let me smile. Seeker smiled a very innocent and sincere smile. But that smile caused Lin's heart to race faster. The three faced fear as if they've never faced before. And somehow they knew it all came from the smiling kid before them. The sensation ended. Meryl started gasping for breath. Sorry that I have to show off a bit. I'm just making sure I become as believable as possible. Seeker paused for the people in the room to regain their composure. So the future war with the Aragarians is between us against Russia and Africa? Charles finally broke the silence. There were other countries in the mix. But again, let's skip those as we could either kill them or control them. Lin still cringed at Seeker's passive thoughts. So to resume, we defeated them when the unlocking research was implemented on various soldiers. They were on the run. It was then that we'd get a taste of their serious tech. The Aragarians took a different path than the technological advances we had on Earth. While we were busy perfecting the ways of selfies, they managed to figure out a science which was later dubbed as stellar science or star science for short. Seeker grabbed a page from Charles's pile of papers and laid it on the table. Everyone intently studied the paper. To summarize this science, they basically could recreate the energy of a star's core. And eventually, they were able to improve on it. This allowed them the capacity to do a lot of incredible things, including interstellar travels to finally reach our planet. This tech was shared to the nations that allied with them, and these nations were already developing weapons using stellar science. It was thanks to the efforts of many heroes that these weapons fell on our hands. Our scientist was able to improve on it and used it against them. They were on the run. Literally leaving the planet was their only option. So we gave chase. And we were in for a surprise. Hidden behind our moon was the Aragarians' invading flagship, a spaceship so big that we called them orbitals. Seeker took another page in the pile of documents and laid it on the table. A drawing of a round spaceship was scribbled on the paper. It was then the battle became to our disadvantage. Their technology was just too advanced. A stellar battle was something that even our forces could barely manage. The orbital attacks were just terrifying. Soon the remaining nations of the United Nations Alliance launched a daring gamble in hopes of destroying the stellar forces in space. We called it Mission Starkiller, and my task was codenamed Supernova. Seeker smiled. This would have been his greatest contribution to humanity. I believe this would have been my proudest moments. Destroying one of these suckers. Seeker sat down and started sketching something on paper. You see, an orbital is a very, very huge ship. The entire world was surprised to see its existence, and the problem was that there were now 3 of them floating on our space. Star technology allowed this massive spaceship to act as a planet. It had gravity, and that meant a lot. Living long-term in an orbital is possible, so these Aragarians may already be hiding near our planet? Most likely. Now to continue. Seeker easily dismissed Lin's serious question as if it wasn't important. An orbital is divided into many compartments. It is made this way due to several reasons. By compartmentalizing each part, it meant stability for the entire ship. If a compartment is damaged, they can simply detach the compartment by controlling the gravity of that compartment. Using star technology, they can make this compartment orbit the ship and repair it. Seeker then picked up the paper to show his sketch. Electric-like energy was shown to be connecting a portion of the orbital. Our scientist was able to make interesting technology by mixing star technology and another technology that we have long mastered. Nuclear technology. Why didn't we use nukes to fight them? Meryl asked immediately. Why wasn't it used in the World War? Charles asked a different question. To answer both, nuclear weapons were disabled even before the World War began. No doubt something the Aragarians instigated. I figure they didn't want a nuclear war to happen as they still plan to inhabit this planet. However, the combination of the 2 technologies gave us a pleasant surprise. We were able to create a nuclear star bomb, something even the Aragarians didn't expect. My mission was to attack the bomb, a smaller orbital created on Earth and was used by many of Earth's traders to escape. We got the plans for the ship and made it look like we were trying to take over the ship. We succeeded with the deception, and the orbital initiated full divide, which compartmentalized the entire ship. During that mission, we configured several compartments to utilize the nuclear stellar tech we developed. Seeker continued to sketch, and displayed his work to make the image of his explanations better. Now on this mission, the compartments that we managed to configure fell a little off the mark from our estimations. However, I was equipped with this bad boy. Seeker took the paper which had the 4-force accelerator. Because of the unlocking, weapons that were previously impossible became available to men. And this was on the pinnacle of that, the 4-force accelerator. Utilizing a fusion of nuclear and star energy, this bad boy can allow movements that go past the speed of sound. Charles took the paper from Seeker's hand. He intently read the paper quickly. Surprise shined in his eyes. I get it. If you who can perceive faster than milliseconds, traveling in the speed of sound is possible. That's right. And this particular technology was the reason I died in my mission. Because the star energy of the bombung wasn't fully overloaded. I dove straight to the core of the bombung's star energy and overloaded my FFA, which should have led to the energy going supernova. I don't know how the mission ended, obviously, or how big the blast was. But the thing was, we were prepared to sacrifice half of the Earth if the supernova would explode beyond our calculations. And that brings us to the present, Seeker concluded. But that doesn't explain how the new you came to be. Charles immediately responded. Everything that I will speak from here on is pure speculation. And I will need you to clarify this, Doctor. At that time, my personal unlocking was 74.56%. For the benefit of Meryl and Lind, my current unlocking is somewhere between 15 to 18%. Lind and Meryl were surprised. If 15 to 18 could already dodge bullets, what could someone beyond 70% do? Charles was as equally stunned. At that moment of my death, I remembered having the phenomenon of seeing my life flashed before my eyes. And that was something miraculous. Seeker smiled. How is it miraculous? People at the normal 10% are able to go through it. So why would it be amazing if you did it? You have over 70% unlocked. It's precise because I had over 70% unlocked that made it a miracle. It wasn't just a normal life review. I felt like I literally relived everything I've been through. Think about it. A person with 10% unlocking would already have a chance of experiencing a life review. Well, what would happen to someone at 70%? When a regular person undergoes a life-threatening situation, its brain may push itself beyond the 10% norm. It could go from 13-18%, but I already had 70%. If you do the math, and I did the minimum 30% increase, what would have been my unlocking? Charles was silently calculating his brain while Lynn did several finger math tricks to solve the equation. 90, Charles and Meryl answered together. And that is the minimum. I had a feeling what I got was something nearer to an 80% increase. I reached a realm unreached even by world champions. I now realize that the highest point of unlocking wouldn't be at 100%. Because if human muscles can exert strength way beyond its capacity, so can the brain. I probably broke through the 100% limit. So you managed to time travel to this point because you went beyond 100%? Lind asked with a confused expression. No, of course not. Now that would be science fiction. There are probably two more factors which made me travel back to this time. 1. The thought transmitter. Only those of high unlocking can utilize that. The Aragarians could hijack and interpret whatever communication devices we have. The thought transmitter, however, could send thoughts. It was something which even the Aragarians couldn't interpret. The second cause was the overloading of the star energy. I theorized that at that moment when I overloaded the system, it created something that could alter time and space. A black hole, Lind realized immediately. Exactly. A black hole may have quickly emerged when the star went supernova. Somehow because of that, I was able to transmit the entirety of my thoughts. You see, you have to think of the person in order to transmit thoughts. At that moment when I was dying, I started to think about the days when Earth was at peace. This time, probably the thought transmitter worked together with the generated black hole and allowed me to send my thoughts back to me now. That sounds impossible. Why would the black hole know which timeline to send you? Lind argued. He has watched several sci-fi movies and TV series and would intently discuss things with Seeker. Somehow the math didn't just add up. As I said, I'm speculating. But it's not impossible. It's improbable. Right now, that's the best explanation we got. So you sent your memories to your present self? But how did that push you to unbecoming? Charles asked as he perused over the thought transmitter. You forget, Doctor, that I was probably beyond 100% of unlocking. I wasn't just able to transfer memories, I was able to transfer everything. The massive dump of information pushed my current brain beyond the limits. I see. Some sort of intense shock therapy? Yes. And that in turn gave me an idea of how to increase the number of unlocked individuals. Seeker gave a devilish grin. If things go well, we should have a squadron of unlocked people by the time the World War begins. Chapter 11. Stage 1. So now that you know everything about my past, let's now build the future. We have kingdoms to claim, people to kill, and an army to build. As for you three, you really don't have any choice in this matter. This war will come and billions will die. Your choice is to join me or die. Seeker sat down and started to munch on some fruits that were still left at the table. So what should I do? Charles was the first to break the silence. Do what you can, Charles. The faster you complete your study in neuro alterations, the brighter the hope for a better tomorrow. Looks like I have to cancel a few movies and commercials. Charles sighed. His life of prestige and fame wasn't so important anymore. Don't. I need you to make certain trips. Right now I will be initiating stage 1 of my plans. When playing any real-time strategy game, we start by gathering resources, right? That's going to be our immediate focus. But what I need is not just money, but power and influence to shape this world into a better place. That requires you to travel and meet certain people. You are already a celebrity anyway. That makes it easier. However, I haven't decided who to go to first. It really depends on how fast your research progresses. Right now, what I need from you is the free use of this little hideout and 3,000 credits. The gang and I will have our hands full. Exactly what are we going to do, Zeke? You might be unlocked, but the rest of us are only human. Meryl was worried. With Zeke's new behavior, she now had apprehensions towards the plans of their best friend. Oh, don't worry, Meryl. We won't be doing anything dangerous. Well, at least not enough that could kill us. Stage 1 is the safest stage. We just need to get money and accomplish a certain level of fame. After all, this is the age of distrustful nations. So we need money to fund our expenses and fame to allow us to cross borders easily. If we're famous, then traveling around the world would be. No more military checks and stuff. Especially when we are entering enemy countries. Let me guess, you are going to publish future famous songs, movies, and books? Charles inquired with a humored look. No, I respect those artists and would dare not steal their work. So singing then? Charles guessed once more. What? Do I look like a singer? I don't know. Maybe you could alter your voice and use your hormones to attract countless girls. Meryl laughed at Charles' guesses. Nah, I need to be a ranked hero to pull that off. Wait, it's possible? Meryl asked in surprise. It is, but I need more unlocking, and it would be too tiring. Plus, I would need to eat a lot to recover. Seeker lamented. Why not start a business? With your memories, you easily become rich. Lynn snapped. Bad idea. It's too much hassle. Seeker countered without hesitation. Okay, that's where you have it wrong, Zeke. The three friends stared at Charles, who called Seeker Zeke. Even Seeker found it uncomfortable that someone was calling his nickname casually. Too soon? Way too soon, Charles. Meryl shook her head. You guys call me Charles and I can't call him Zeke? Where is the respect in that? I'm a famed neurosurgeon. Even Lynn started to shake his head in disapproval of Charles's actions. Frustrated, Charles ignored the two and talked directly to Seeker. Anyways, I'm into a lot of businesses and I would recommend you to dash. Let me just interrupt you there. Document. Right now I need to earn millions. And I need to earn it quickly. Setting up a business takes a lot of time. Not to mention, since I'm aiming for something that earns daily, a fast-growing business like that would create a lot of competitions, possible assassinations, and not to mention I could alter history if my company gets bigger. Plus, if I'm in a business that's successful and huge, the government is sure to watch over me and even take a lot of my taxes. You see, one priority that I need to manage is our team being inconspicuous and not affecting the general timeline. What? So slaughtering nations isn't inconspicuous, but setting up a coffee shop is evil? Charles mused. I won't start killing people until the World War, you know? Right now, I must minimize the changes I make in the future. If I start a huge and growing business, then I would create a series of chain reactions that might change the world that I've come to know. Imagine, one fast and incredible company grows, it would bring unnecessary attention to me and will lead to an infinite amount of unknown variables that could affect the general timeline that I remember. A simple coffee meeting in the future could already create infinitely new possibilities if it didn't go through. People who were there that shouldn't have been, or people who weren't there that should have been may already have altered their very fate. A missed coffee shop may mean a missed event or failure to meet a certain person. Who knows how it will affect the future? How can that be possible? I miss a coffee meeting. I end up a lesbian in the future? Meryl objected. That's right, Charles realized. Are you calling me a lesbian? No, not that. What Seeker means is that a small act could create ripples of changes in the world. The time you spent on this would be spent on something else. You meet new people, encounter events, and whatever. And that is just one coffee meeting. If Seeker built a business which would be successful on a national level, it would change a lot of things. Meryl and Lynn thought deeply about Charles's explanation. Nutterballs. Didn't know it would be that complicated. If we think that way, what can we do to make money? Even stealing money would have that same level of impact. It's actually easy to accomplish that. Take over an organization. Make the CEO a puppet and have him act normally. That way, apart from the future fate of the CEO, no major alterations and changes will happen. I see. That's brilliant. Charles commended. Which company are you eyeing? I don't know the name. Basically, I'm going to go after the strongest drug and human trafficking organization in the Pangaean nations. A condemning look immediately replaced Charles's face. Meryl and Lind were surprised as well. What? Are you insane? Charles was flushed in anger. Why not? The money I earn is kept off the record, meaning it can be spent on a lot of things. It's normal for cartels to purchase weapons and the like, so no flag is raised. But most importantly, it's actually in connection with a specific requirement that I need to prepare for in the upcoming stages of my plan. I need to get connected to the drug cartels in order to shake some trees in their organization. Otherwise, the big boss won't come out. Oh, well, let's say you have the best intentions for doing that. How do you intend to do that? You'd be putting everybody at risk if you do that now. I know. Which is why, in preparation to take over that organization, I need to earn enough money to purchase a few weapons, ammunition, and stuff. And where are you going to get enough funds for that? I thought you weren't going to ask for money from me? I never planned on asking money from you, Charles. I need to start a career that could generate a lot of money, but at the same time create minimal changes for the future. Something that will influence a lot of people to spend money, but not enough that would change their overall life. So it's prostitution then. I knew it. Meryl facepalmed. It all makes sense now. It would generate a lot of money and minimize its effects in the timeline. What? Lind reacted. Was he about to become a gigolo, or will Seeker carry this heavy burden alone? Charles had a very ugly expression. Seeker gaped in wonder at Meryl's deduction. He pondered for a bit. I've never thought about that. Seeker laughed. But that's not it. Lynn sighed in relief while Meryl was laughing. Then what job could fulfill each criteria? Zeke? Professional gamers. Seeker smiled. With that, I can easily ask for payment for streams and donations. Also, you forget the advent of the gambling den. That app would be a potential area for us to earn a lot. Regardless, there would virtually be no life-changing ripple effects if I get a lot of money from gamers. I mean, the people who would watch these streams are all avid gamers who spend countless hours behind the computer screen. At most, they probably would have spent their time and money on other games instead of watching me. The ripple effects drastically minimized, and I could get a certain level of fame, maybe enough to travel around the world, including enemy countries. Lind and Meryl's face brightened up. Finally, something that is up to their alley. Charles smiled at the ingenious calculations of Seeker. Virtually be no life-changing ripple effects? Pun intended? Charles laughed, but I'm impressed. Looks like you're all set for stage 1. Of course. Once I have enough money from my gaming career, I would buy the necessary stuff, meet the key people and kidnap Miss Alion Cipral in order to blackmail her father. It took a few seconds for Seeker's sentence to sink in before Lind shouted exasperatedly. Wait, one of those doesn't seem to make any sense. Alion Cipral's dad, General Harker Cipral is involved in some drug and human trafficking operations. So we'll start with him as an entry point to the world of cartels. Seeker casually responded as he started peeling a mango. Lind and Meryl gulped in fear. Looks like they won't be returning to a fun and monotonous life of a rising student in their school. They gulped at the thought of their future. All this trouble to shake a big boss out of his nest. Who's this big boss that you need to take care of? All in good time, my dear Lind. The less you know about him, the better. This guy's extremely dangerous. If I fight him now, I'd definitely die. The trio looked at Seeker in surprise. Was there someone on Earth that could kill a man with unlocking? How? You can dodge bullets. Yeah? Well, this guy wouldn't need to dodge anything. He's practically bulletproof. Chapter 12. The Game Gambler. Meryl laid half dead on the floor. She could no longer find the strength to even lift herself to help Lind, who was screaming. Lind was grasping his leg. The pain was unbearable. He started to panic. So this was the price for his allegiance to Seeker. Seeker stood there alone, unfazed at the harsh enemy that was before them. The gym had a complete set of all the needed equipments that could suit the needs of a muscle freak. After discussing their plans and bidding farewell to Charles, the three friends immediately pursued the necessary acts in order to begin their journey to richness. Calling their parents. They were teenagers after all. They informed their respective parents of their late return home. Lind had a peculiar look when he was getting an earful from her mom about how playing games would amount to nothing in the future. If she only knew that their gaming could save the world. After a tiring talk of berating condescension from their parents, they started to immediately prepare the laptops and computers to stream their game. Seeker then initiated what came to be the harshest time for Meryl and Lind. The trio started to work out. As the two remained paralyzed in agony, cursing Seeker and vowing to cut ties with this inhuman drill master, Seeker began his next set of exercises. Seeker soon ended his routine. He was sweating profusely. His hands were visibly shaking. Ugh, looks like this is the limit. Luckily, I am able to block off the pain thanks to my unbecoming instinct. But if I exerted more, I would strain my muscles. Seeker grumbled. I guess I have to give this a rest. Having a level 1 body sucks. Seeker sat down to rest. Lind finally was able to ease the pain of his cramps. This will be our routine daily. After school, we'll continue with an hour of workout, then stream a game guide. Lind's cramps returned. That simple statement that Seeker said was the most terrifying statement he has made so far. Meryl wanted to just kill herself now. Why was it that a small, timid, and bookish girl was forced to do push-ups, squats, and all forms of exercises that left her body broken? The evil Seeker acted like a drill master, forcing them to continue. And tomorrow would be another grueling day with this demon-possessed friend of theirs. There is an old saying that says that a prophet in his hometown is not a prophet. It means that the familiarity that people have towards him would make them less likely to believe or respect him. Thankfully, I'm not a prophet. In the future, you are both dead. I'm doing you guys a favor so you can live and even have the strength to save your family. So suck it up, guys. We have more things to take care of. Seeker pointed at the laptops that were ready to be used. Slowly, the dying pair crawled towards their assigned positions. Now let's play piercing. Bullet. Seeker looked excited. Lind was enlightened. Of course, if there were days of peace, then Seeker would have had completed piercing. Bullet with him. 3 computers were booted up. Seeker turned on the computer which he would use to play on. Meryl logged on to Seeker's account and prepared the video stream. She moved the detachable computer camera to directly view the computer screen. Another camera was mounted on the side showing Seeker facing the screen. This is a weird position for the camera, Zeke. Shouldn't it be facing you? Lind complained. We need it there. I need to show people that I am not cheating. Hence my hand movements and reactions must be shown real time. This allows us to have proof that we are actually playing the game. A cheat? Why would people accuse you of cheating? Meryl asked in confusion. Microsecond perception and advanced motor coordination. Meryl. Seeker responded with an "it's so obvious" look. You mean you can play the game at pro level? Lind realized how good Seeker is at this game now. That would be an understatement. Adding to my already inherited skills is my memory of this game. Do you know how long the 3 of us played this game in that past life? Seeker smiled. Lind looked excited, as if he forgot the intense workout he just had. Let's have a test run to see if I still got it. Piercing. Bullet was a third-person style, hack-and-slash video game which became the hallmark games for testing the hands and wrist of gamers worldwide. It boasted as one of the most difficult games created in the past decades. But here was Seeker doing what he claims to be a test run. Lin's eyes were wide open. In a matter of minutes, Seeker already cleared the first boss, and what was even more amazing was that his character did not receive any damages or hits from the enemy. As the hack-and-slash genre evolved, speed became the priority. Game developers aimed to push player skills to the peak with complicated rules of blocking, evasion, and attacking. This was why Piercing Edge, the predecessor of Piercing Bullet, was so successful. In fact, it was so successful that it created a new generation of esport gamers and became one of the most anticipated esport game seconds only to generals. Looks like we're good to go. Meryl, tell me if Charles has already loaded the 3,000 credits to my account. And start the stream once the game is rebooted. We're about to make a lot of money. Let's hope that this stream would be my one shot to fame. Let's start. Meryl, start the stream. Lind, use that computer to advertise this stream. Be bold. In fact, share the link at Precept Gaming's official social site. Do the same to the microblogging sites. I'll leave the titles to you. Be creative. Having received the link from Meryl, Lind started sharing the link on all related gaming sites he knew. The audacious title was sure to get the attention of Piercing fans. Since it was a live stream, its credibility would immediately be confirmed. Seeker returned with a brand new set of clothes. He took a quick look at Meryl's streaming configurations. Add a donation box, enable the gambling den, and close the voice feature too. I'll leave chatting to you. Oh, and I'll need an extended monitor, so I can look at the chat as well. Seeker connected another monitor and attached it to Meryl's computer. Then he immediately positioned himself ready to play the game. The live stream began. The audacious title that Lind used, Miracle No-Hit Piercing Bullet Walkthrough, brought people in to immediately view it. Upon starting, the live stream already catered over 30 curious viewers. Now I know what you are all thinking. Seeker began, and he stared on the screen. Is this a troll? Well, you are about to find out. First, let me show you how to clear the first stage without getting a single hit. And Seeker delivered. The first boss was cleared faster than how he did it on his test run. The chat room went wild. The first boss was already a hurdle that many had a hard time defeating. This was Piercing Bullet, the harshest games that made you die 100 times before you would get it right. And yet here was a student who took less than 24 hours to master and beat the first boss without even getting a scratch. And that, little kiddies, are how you kill a boss without getting hit? Seeker smirked. Lind and Meryl watched with eyes that wondered who it was before them. This wasn't their humble and low-key friend, Seeker Carlean, nor was this the nation-burning, bullet-dodging friend they just met. What they had now was a natural showman. Seeker kept responding to some of the chats as people were amazed at his quick progression. Seeker's charismatic behavior and playful use of gamer competitiveness was a hit. More and more people started viewing the stream, some cheering for Seeker while others were accusing Seeker of hacking or cheating. Lind continued to advertise on the site. The comments that could be seen on the social media sites attracted more viewers as its credibility was soon verified on the net. Meryl was heated up in the chat group arguments as he defended Seeker from his haters. Seeker, on the other hand, just went on with the gameplay, answering several questions thrown at him. Seeker, we got the 3,000 credits from Drive Charles, Meryl joyfully reported. Seeker smirked. Now it's time to make some money. How about this? In the next room is a fairly difficult area. I won't use blocks and only evade, but I'll defeat all the enemies, including the mini-boss, without getting a single hit. Anyone willing to bet? I'll set it with a buy-in of 30 credits. Seeker smirked. The chat group was in intense discussion. A game that is skill-dependent would never be perfect. Even pro gamers in the piercing world wouldn't dare make such a gamble. Several people started to throw in their credits in the gambling den option. There were now 150 credits on the opposing table. Meryl set the gambling rules to divided exchange and throw 3,000 credits in the Denver. Seeker smiled. Meryl and Lind had an evil smile on their face. They knew with Seeker's powers a no-hit walkthrough was very possible. When the viewers saw that there were now 3,000 credits, people scrambled to throw in their share. Right now there were only 5 who dared gamble. If they won, the 3,000 credit would be divided equally among them. The credits on the opposition immediately went to 1620 credits. Close the betting, Seeker ordered. after which he controlled his avatar to immediately rush into the room. A lot of cries continued in the chat group. They were just about to throw in their share for the gamble. Even though Lind and Meryl were confident, they couldn't help but cringe at Seeker's death-defying acts. He was unable to block and would only evade. But in the end, the miracle happened right before their eyes. A lot of viewers were cursing. Several even accused Seeker of hacking. The problem was that they could clearly see Seeker playing the game. But because they lost, they immediately made accusations of Seeker's play, calling him a fraud. Okay then, let me prove to you that this is not a hack. I'll allow myself to get hit. Seeker went to a nearby enemy and allowed the enemy to hit him. He then started evading as another blow could kill him. As you can see, it's not hacked. Seeker smiled. The game went on strangely as Seeker accepted any challenge from the accusations of several viewers. Seeker even followed various requests to prove his authenticity as a gamer. Alright, I believe I've humored you enough. At this point, I don't care what you say about my play. I already did many things you guys asked to prove my innocence. Seeker paused and started crunching his fingers. Alright, next, I'm going to gamble all the credits I have, all 4,620 of them. I won't block. I'll only evade, but I'll kill the next boss without getting a single hit. Meryl set buy into 50 credits. Seeker commanded with a look full of arrogance. Chapter 13. A Power Walkthrough. As the credit on Seeker's side rose to 4,260, people started to join in the bet. It was just too huge of a gamble for Seeker, and the rewards of those who participated were just too much. Meryl put a paywall for those joining the room. Set it to 20 credits. Seeker ordered. This stopped the constant flow of viewers. But later on, the numbers of viewers started to increase. Alright guys, the den is closed. Now let's see who will win. As you can see, I'm all in. Seeker gave another arrogant laugh. Meryl immediately closed the den at Seeker's cue. Seeker immediately went in to face the boss. A cutscene initiated as Seeker's avatar went into a warehouse. Inside the warehouse stood several soldiers with what appeared to be specialized gear. The team immediately started flying using a jet-propelling backpack. The game continued, and the battle then initiated. Seeker controlled his avatar to perform in deadly maneuvers of evasion. The viewers were at awe at what they were seeing. Seeker utilized the environment well to hide from the bullets that rained down on the avatar. But when he dove into the open field, he carefully evaded each enemy attack and would occasionally make attacks of his own. The main character in Piercing, Bullet, was equipped with a long rifle which he used as a pole in close range. Seeker utilized both close and ranged combat to inflict damage on the several soldiers zooming around the warehouse. As Seeker promised, no blocks were used. He evaded every single attack and managed to already kill 5 of the 9 flying soldiers. The chat room was filled with berserk comments of rage, amazement, and curses. He must be pro. He's definitely pro. A viewer chatted. I don't think he's pro. I don't know him or recognize his voice. This is definitely a hack. He's cheating. Cheating? Right. With everything Zeke did to prove that he's not? Don't be a baby, loser. Meryl haughtily countered. The gambling den was affiliated with various gaming companies and would even utilize intense security protocols to ensure that no hackers would win in scenarios such as this. As such, their credibility when a bet involving their systems was at the highest level. No one questioned a bet if it was held in gambling den. It ended as was expected. Seeker won the battle without getting a single hit. The complaints couldn't do anything. Various viewers who participated in the bet already reported the game to Gambling Denver. However, no actions were made to Seeker's account. After the defeat of the boss, Seeker continued with the walkthrough. Several viewers were hooked at the many secrets that Seeker showed them. Seeker would occasionally bribe others for donations, which caused him to receive more credits. Various viewers would suddenly challenge him to a no-hit challenge or a no-block bet, hoping to catch Seeker off guard. Whenever a challenge would be made, Seeker immediately agreed. Seeker acted reserved by placing only a third of all his credits, causing others to think he wasn't confident. Of course, Seeker continued to win more using these tricks. People grumbled at Seeker's shameless money-grabbing behavior. He already had over 10,000 credits due to his gambling spree and another 1,440 from the entry fees, but he would still ask for donations. Soon, Seeker finally decided to end the stream. Alright guys, I'll leave a poll behind which would decide the future direction of the stream. I could continue with this game and complete it at around 47 hours. I assure you that this is the fastest full walkthrough out there. But as you can see, I am just about 4 hours in. So I'll be making a poll. Should I continue in this full walkthrough or do something else? Something no one could confidently create now. A power walkthrough. With this, I can complete the game in 19 hours at most. The choice is yours. Seeker smiled. The chat room went wild. 19 hours was a record-breaking time. The world record for fastest completion time for piercing. Edge was 22 hours. Seeker claimed he could manage a completion time which was 3 hours earlier. Several viewers who had lost a lot of credits in gambling against Seeker, naturally they felt an inclination to believe Seeker when he claimed he could challenge a world record. Please share this video and let's make history together. My future streams will require a 50 credit buy-in. This is because I will be revealing how to form the strongest weapons early on in the game and how to exploit boss fights. Even if you are new to this game, it would save you about 10 to 15 hours worth of gameplay. Not to mention you can also take part in the bets and could even dare me any challenge along the way. For tomorrow's game, I will start an all-in rule, meaning I will dump all my credits for whatever bets you challenge me. Provided it is within reason, of course. The chats continued to discuss further. Everyone wanted to see a power walkthrough, especially when the one playing has yet to receive any damage since he started. So that's all for tonight, guys. Good night. Without even waiting for any signal from Seeker, Meryl immediately closed the stream. That was amazing, Zeke. We have about 16,000 credits now. That's enough for a round trip, all expense paid the trip to another country. Meryl excitedly calculated. Zeke, you should check online. We caused quite a sensation. Even Precept Gaming has released a statement in which they were monitoring your gameplay. Lind excitedly reported. Things are going as planned. Seeker grinned. Anyways, we should hurry and go home. We have a busy day tomorrow. More important than the stream is that you rest your sore muscles. Put some ice in it or something. Oh, and don't forget to tell your parents that you'd be going home late starting tomorrow. Seeker started packing. Do we have to do the workout? Meryl complained. Lynn simply stared at Seeker with a pleading look. Seeker frowned and looked at them irritably. We have to, guys. You know, Seeker was about to say something, but he stopped. What? Meryl asked. Never mind. Now's not the right time to convince you. Seeker grumbled. Convince us? With what? We believe you. You don't have to convince us with anything. Never mind. Let's talk again tomorrow. The trio later started packing and later left for home. Seeker arrived home and immediately dashed into his parents' bedroom and hugged his parents tightly. Chris and Grace were surprised at how their son started acting more intimately towards them. Grace simply smiled and looked dotingly upon her only son. Seeker smiled and talked casually with them, saying that he was hooked in the new piercing game. Seeker gave an excuse and went to his room. Upon entering, Seeker started calling Charles. Seeker, I've seen the stream. I heard you earned a lot of credits. Charles exclaimed as he picked up the phone. Earning 16,000 credits was something he could only earn if he performed surgeries. Yet Seeker managed to earn in a very unconventional way. Yeah, things are going great. Listen, I recalled that you're a collector of weapons. Do you have some now? Oh, so it means this crazy collection of mine managed to reach the future. That's relieving. Yes, I already served in different tours across enemy countries. I tend to buy whatever swords, axes, and other weapons that are explicit on these nations. Are these weapons sturdy? If you're asking me whether or not these weapons can kill a man, then yes, Charles seriously answered. He never thought that these weapons would be used for assassinations. Seeker laughed. Don't worry. I'm not planning to kill people with that. Let's just say it's going to be part of the training I have in store for all of you. Oh, don't take this the wrong way, Seeker. You may be faster than me, but in terms of raw strength, I'm definitely better than you. I don't think I need training on that matter. I have my own routine. It's not just a physical training session, Charles. It's more of handling weapons. Then at that case, I'll join. The weapon-crazed collector immediately agreed. Great. I'll tell you when to join us. Right now, I need to do a crash course physical workout for the guys and for myself. The weapon training will require us to do some extreme and intense routines. So I need to prepare our muscles. Zeke, are you sure it's the right thing to bring those two in all of this? There was silence on the other line. Charles waited for Seeker to respond, but then he realized something. Still too soon to call you by your nickname, huh? Charles complained. Anyways, I don't think it was wise to get your two friends involved. They're not mature enough for these kinds of things. They're still kids. I feel that they're not serious about this. I noticed, but don't worry, Charles. I'll handle that. Talk to you later. Seeker ended the call. He dove back to bed and enjoyed a good night's sleep. The next day, Seeker was standing at the entrance of the school waiting for his friends to arrive. Meryl arrived first. Looks like you overstrained yourself. Seeker laughed. Meryl stared angrily at Seeker as she was slowly dragged her legs. She couldn't walk properly with the intense one-hour workout she experienced. We shouldn't do any more later, Zeke. Can't you see that I'm a girl? Look at what I got because you treated me like some macho soldier boy. Meryl was practically angry at Seeker. It was very hard for her to commute to the school as people would be rushing while she would be crawling. Soon the two spotted a tall teen walking like he was a zombie on his lower half. His pace was extremely slow. Meryl and Seeker laughed at the sight of Lind. Zeke, I don't think we should do another workout later. My body is too tired and too sore. Lind had a pleading look. Seeker laughed again. Lind was one of the tallest students in the school. His pleading eyes didn't suit his large stature. Don't worry, guys. Our workout later will focus on the upper body. Seeker grinned. Meryl and Lind shivered at what Seeker said. Can't you give us a rest day? We can't freaking block the pain like you can, you know? Meryl angrily chastised. Her timid look was naturally unseen at this moment. Hey, little kiddies. A malicious laughing and almost mocking voice sounded. Seeker and the two turned to witness one of the most feared delinquents in school. Cliff Fongwood was the leader of a delinquent group which was rumored to be involved in many shady activities. Hey there, baby giant. Cliff teased Lind with a mocking tone. Though he was not as tall as Lind, he was still feared by the students in the school. His pitch-black hair and his rebel image undoubtedly caused many teen girls to fall in attraction. He had a well-built frame which he would showcase to the girls around the school and used it to intimidate others. And of course, there were the brass knuckles that he would always wear. This brass knuckles had tasted the blood of a number of students. No one would dare fight this menace. A little birdie told me that you earned a lot of credits last night. His smile terrified Lind and Meryl. Seeker, however, looked angry. Chapter 14. The Smell of Fear. Lind and Meryl felt terrified. Who would have thought that their internet exposure would draw in the brass fist? I have a business proposal for you, Seeker Carlean. Cliff laughed. Seeker's angry frown slowly turned into a happy smile. What a coincidence. Now that I think about it, I have a proposal for you too. Seeker returned with a smile that was devoid of all fear. Cliff was surprised at Seeker's reaction. He expected shivering, silence, or pleading. But this kid actually looked happy. I think we should find a more secretive place to discuss this. Do you know of any other places that are more conducive than the open grounds of school? Seeker asked innocently. Well, of course. Anything for my business partner. In fact, I know the perfect place. Let's go together after school. It would be a shame if my partners would get lost. See you later then. Let's go. Seeker led his two friends away. Cliff ignored Seeker's nonchalant attitude. He knew that this was the kid who experienced a manic breakdown 2 days ago. Lind and Meryl tried to match Seeker's pace. After an intense discussion with the most dangerous person in school, the two tried to walk as fast as they could to get away from Cliff, but their ailing leg prevented them from doing so. Students couldn't help but stare at the odd pace the three walked. Zeke, do you know what you're doing? Lind worriedly asked. Oh geez, don't be a baby, Lind. You've seen how Zeke could dodge a bullet. Zeke would be sure to give that Cliff Fongwood something that his fangs couldn't scratch. Right, Zeke? Meryl's confident tone changed to an inquiringly worried voice at the end of the sentence. Don't worry about him. I just thought of a good way to use him. Seeker smiled. Lind and Meryl were relieved. Things were easier when you're with a super teen. Anyways, Zeke, what about the workout? I don't think I could type if we push through with it later on. Can't we give it a rest? Meryl complained once more. No. We need to get you guys used to extreme movements. Otherwise, we can't dive into phase 2 of your workouts. Once you guys are ready, I'll even have Charles join us. Wait, Charles is going to join us? Have you seen his abs? No, Meryl. I don't search for images of his abs. Seeker sardonically replied. I'm just saying, you can't group me and Lind with him to do whatever exercises you want. Meryl then blushed. And man, his abs are yummy. Are you going to have abs like him, Zeke? Seeker gave a disgusted look at Meryl. Well, sure you will. I can't wait to get my hands on those delightful rocks. Meryl stared greedily at Seeker. When I signed the contract of our friendship, I was sure that there was no clause indicating that I have to reveal my abs to you and have you touch it. I'm adding a clause right now, Meryl joyfully countered. Yeah. Going back to the workout, Zeke, Lind inquired pleadingly. Seeker gave an exasperated sigh. You don't have a choice, guys. I need to ensure you guys get into the first steps of unlocking. Unlock us? Why would you need to unlock us? Meryl gave a surprised cry. If I can't unlock you guys, then the future would probably remain as bleak as it was. I can't do everything by myself. You guys should know that by now. Seeker started getting more and more frustrated. Zeke, why are you trying to unlock us? It's not as if we'd be soldiers like you, right? Lind asked with a confused expression. You aren't, but that's not the point. Seeker waved his hands in anger. The two was startled at Seeker's sudden rage and remained silent. Sorry, Zeke. It's just that we don't have the memories that you have. We aren't soldiers. We're students. You know how capable we are. It would be not right if you demanded more from us. Meryl calmly spoke. Seeker remained silent. The bell rang and students started to shuffle towards the class. Seeker's pace started to increase as he rushed to class. But Lind and Meryl continued with their snail-paced walk. The class carried on as usual. Lind and Meryl gave a curious stare when Ms. Alion Ciprel arrived to teach her usual lesson. Who would have thought that her father would be involved in something terrible as human trafficking? They couldn't help but wonder if she is involved as well. The classes for that day had no unusual occurrences. Seeker remained passive in everything while Meryl and Lind wondered how long they will experience peaceful days like this. Class later ended, and the trio walked out of school to meet a group of 8 students. Leading the 8 was the delinquent that they just met earlier, Cliff Fongwood. The group smiled at a distance. They knew that with the many watchful eyes around, they couldn't touch Seeker. Cliff casually nodded his head, indicating that Seeker was to follow. Seeker merely smiled. Lind and Meryl were no longer afraid. They knew that if Seeker could display this confident smile, no harm would befall them. They slowly followed the group of 8. Cliff led the gang towards a small park which was no longer maintained by the city. The park used to have beautiful flowers and was regularly maintained as many visitors would relax at this place thanks to the serene sounds caused by the nearby river. However, as the water slowly became more and more polluted, fewer people visited the park and soon it was abandoned by the government. Seeker knew that they would be led here. This was the known hideout for Cliff and his gang. So Seeker, Cliff began. He stared at Seeker with a haughty expression. Now that you are here, I hope you can enjoy our hospitality. The 17s who followed Cliff started to stand around Seeker and his group. My business proposal is simple. I want all your credits. Everything that you earned from your game guide is now mine, Cliff arrogantly demanded. And what do I get in return? Seeker calmly asked. You don't get punched by me. You think I'm scared of your mom? So what if she works in this school? Cliff mocked. Seeker laughed. That's a very unfair proposal. Why should I accept? Cliff looked angry. Let me get this into your brain-damaged head, because I will beat the crap out of you. See this? Cliff took out the brass fist. Do you want to get punched by this? Brass fist is always looking for some stupid nerd to hit. You should fear me. Cliff arrogantly clenched his fist with the brass knuckles. Fear you? Seeker smiled. Do you even know what fear is? As soon as they heard Seeker, Cliff and his gang felt as if the air itself disappeared. They couldn't breathe. An unexplainable dread started to clutch their hearts. Fear is caused by a number of factors. Seeker calmly walked around Cliff. Cliff started shivering as he saw this. Seeker approached one of Cliff's gang members. The student started to back away in fear at the sight of Seeker approaching. When you see a tiger slowly approach you, your brain interprets that as a threat. That is fear. Seeker smiled as he approached closer. The teen couldn't even speak or cry out. His fears were escalating as Seeker's steps drew nearer. But how does the brain do that? The answer? Sometimes it deduces what to fear is based on your knowledge. If you don't know if something is poisonous, you won't be afraid of eating it. Seeker smiled at the terrorized teen. The teen stumbled back. Except for Meryl and Lind, none of the other students could move. They were scared stiff at the unthreatening sight of Seeker walking. The brain may also instinctively know what to fear. This is because the brain may interpret an unfamiliar object, person, or idea as something to fear. Seeker turned around and returned to the center of the circle. Everyone of Cliff's gang tried to back away, but somehow they felt that their body wasn't responding. Both knowledge and ignorance may lead to fear. Seeker stood in the center and started clacking his knuckles. At the sound of the unremarkable cracks of Seeker's knuckles, several of the students flinched. As you can see, fear can also be heightened based on the circumstance and scenarios present. The brain takes into consideration sight, sounds, and senses. This is why the sound of a gunshot is interpreted as a threat and people panic when they hear that sound. After saying this sentence, Seeker immediately dashed towards another student. The poor student couldn't react at Seeker's sudden acceleration. Clap. Seeker clapped his hands directly in front of the teen's face. The shock of Seeker's sudden movement, paired with the loud clap, caused the student to immediately stumble. The student started to convulse as he lay on the grassy earth. Everyone, including Lind and Meryl, started to sweat in fear. A mere clap caused this person to faint. There is another method to induce fear, and it's that very method that's causing you to be intensely frightened right now. Seeker slowly approached Cliff, and that method is through smell. Seeker smiled. That smile was etched deep into Cliff's memories. Pow! A tooth-shattering uppercut was delivered and Cliff stumbled down. The jolt of pain awakened him from his paralyzed state. However, Seeker's uppercut shook his entire being. His vision was blurry. He tried to stand, but he was too dizzy. Cliff started to crawl in the moment he finally regained a bit of sense as to where he was and what was happening around. He saw several of his friends on the ground beaten and bleeding. As he gazed upward, he was even more horrified. Seeker was using another teen as a human log and smashed this teen to another. Seeker tossed the pummeled body of the teen log, and then Seeker dashed towards Cliff. A white blur was all that Cliff could see, and then he felt a sudden pain in his face as Seeker smashed his kneecap towards Cliff's face. Cliff stumbled back, facing the sky. He couldn't move anymore. He gazed at the vast sky and could hear various screams of pain. He had no doubt that those were his friends pleading for their lives. But despite the hysterical screams, Cliff allowed peace to take over. Slowly, his consciousness left him. Chapter 15. Those Afraid of the Future. That was scary. Lind wiped the sweat off his brow. Seeker made easy work with the paralyzed students. Lind stared in amazement at Seeker, who was now positioning Cliff to an inclined position. Zeke, stop. You did enough. Meryl cried. I'm not going to hurt him, Meryl. I need to wake him up. I still have a business proposal, remember? Seeker then proceeded to perform an ancient method of awakening a sleeping soul. Slap. Hey, wake up. A ringing slap was delivered and awoken Cliff from his stupor. Cliff panicked and started to struggle, but couldn't move as Seeker was pressing his hands on him. Seeker lifted his hands once more. Slap. Please don't kill me, Cliff cried. Relax. I'm not going to hurt you. I have a business proposal for you, Cliff. Meryl and Lind stared dryly. Seeker wasn't going to hurt him? What about the Muay Thai knee strike he just did? Cliff was shaking but listened carefully at Seeker. Answer me honestly, do you sell drugs? Seekers asked the leader of the gang. Cliff gulped. He slowly nodded his head in confirmation. Great, that makes it easier. Seeker smiled. Where do you get your drugs, and why haven't the school taken any action to deal with you despite the circulating rumors? Cliff was sweating profusely. It's Mr. Yoon. Mr. Yoon is my supplier. Professor Yoon, Seeker corrected. What? Meryl was shocked. Nutterballs. Of all the teachers, it's that timid international language professor? Well, what did you guys expect? Miss Ciprel won't dirty her hands in doing this. Remember that she is a general's daughter. If anyone fishes out information about her activities, it would create a riot in the Pangean nation's military. Now, little Cliffy, you will contact Professor Yun and tell him that you just had a contact who plans on purchasing in bulk. You have to get the contact details of his supplier. Do you understand? Cliff stared at Seeker with a confused expression. Seeker then took out a piece of paper in his pocket. I need you to accomplish this by the end of this week. Go to this address if you have the information. Owen Cliff. Seeker then immediately choked Cliff with one hand and carried him high. Cliff was gasping for breath. The intense emotions of terror and fear returned. Fail to do so, and I'll kill you. Seeker threw Cliff down to the ground. Cliff was gasping for breath, and was crawling away from Seeker. "Let's go," Seeker calmly called out to his two friends as he walked away. Seeker didn't even turn back to take a look at Cliff. Meryl and Lind, on the other hand, kept turning their heads to observe Seeker and the crawling Cliff. "I'm tired. Let's get something good to eat," Seeker casually mentioned. He led his two friends to the nearby food district and went to the more prestigious shops in the district. "Seeker, where are we eating?" Meryl wondered. She was not used to the dishes being served at the area they went to, as her allowance could only afford cheap meals. "Trust me, guys. I'm doing you a favor. You better list down which dishes you want to eat, as most of these may not be available in the future." Seeker smiled. The two silently followed, making Seeker decide which restaurant they were to dine in. Seeker led the two to a classy buffet restaurant. "This looks promising. I could eat all those long-lost dishes." Seeker smiled. "We're eating here?" Lind asked in shock. He had no experience of dining at such a restaurant. "Yeah, might as well, right? If I want to eat the variety of foods that this world has to offer, this place is a great place to start. Western, Eastern, Mediterranean, you name it." Seeker immediately dove in without waiting for the two. Meryl and Lind looked at each other and followed excitedly. Seeker immediately went to gather the delicacies he aimed to devour as soon as their seat was assigned. The two followed ignorantly as they experienced what they felt to be paradise. Seeker's dishes covered the majority of the table. Lind and Meryl only had less than a fourth of the table for their own. "Are you sure you can eat all of that, Zeke?" Meryl asked worriedly. "Don't worry. I need to take in more food. It may not seem much, but I burned a lot of energy earlier. Plus, I need to prepare for the planned activities that I have scheduled." Seeker continued to munch in the various dishes around his seat. Meryl stared in wonder at Seeker, who happily devoured the meals before him. "You know, it's times like these that I think the future won't be as bad as you say it will be." Lind sighed. "How bad is the future?" Meryl asked with a serious expression. "Pretty grim. It was very hopeless." Seeker recollected. "How? We had people like you, right? I mean, Nutterballs, Zeke. You mowed those bullies like they were rodents." "A shot at victory? Wrong. What we had was simply the capacity to strike back. That didn't mean we were winning. So what if we can dodge bullets? Light-speed weapons, strange biological gases, cloaking technology, advanced computer hacking, and weapons hijacking. Those were the least of our worries." "Sounds pretty bad." Meryl looked grim. "It's worse than it sounds. We had problems in almost everything. Food, water, manpower, weapons, you name it. Everything was lacking. This is why every small thing we accomplish now could vastly change the future." "Is that why you're turning us into unlocked humans?" Meryl finally had the courage to ask. "Obviously, and it won't end with you." Seeker smiled. "Why not start with someone else, Zeke? We can't do what you do." "Of course you can. If I can do it, you can." Zeke confidently boasted and started munching over his meals. Lind had an angry glare. Meryl also shared a frustrated grunt. Those words were what Seeker would usually say to give them a boost of confidence. However, those words never managed to accomplish that. "You can, but we can't. Here we go again." Meryl angrily grunted once more. Seeker was surprised at the sudden turn of emotions of his friends. "What's wrong with you guys?" "Of course you can. You really don't know, do you?" Lind asked with an exasperated expression. "Know what? We aren't like you. You're not even supposed to be a rising. Heck, for all we know, you could even do better than those chummy royals." "What are you talking about?" Seeker stopped his dining and paid full attention to his friends. "Zeke, I've known you for about 2 years, and it didn't take me long to notice what Lind, who has been your friend for ages, noticed long ago." "Noticed what?" Seeker stared at Lind. "You're a genius, Zeke. You always were. You don't belong in the rising classes." "What are you talking about? My grades were always subpar." "Really? Was it? Or did you intentionally do that? You're always asleep at classes, you always don't listen. Yet if you chose to, you could have aced all those tests. You would even intentionally make a few mistakes in order to get a low grade." "Zeke, let me put it this way," Meryl interrupted before Seeker could even start to defend himself. "We're not on the same level. You have always been ahead of us, but chose to slow down for our sakes. And we were always fine with that. Until now. You say we can do it. We can be like you. Unlocked. But that is not true. We were never on the same level. If you push forward and give it your all, we won't be able to catch up. I can help you, Dash. No, you can't, Zeke. This time it was Lind who drew the line. Not this time. You never understood how I and Meryl would do our best, but always remain mediocre. We know. We've seen it in your eyes all these years. You claimed to be mediocre, but we knew. You were doing it because you were confident that you could easily surpass everyone, even the best of the royals. You never understood what it meant to fail. Seeker was silent. Things started to make sense for him. His untapped potential, him being one of the very few people on Earth that could achieve the unlocking, even his capabilities to stand to support the world champions. He was a genius. Looks like you finally get it, huh? You can't push us, Zeke. Not this time. Not because we are unwilling, but simply because we can't. Don't put us on the same level as you. Meryl harshly spoke what was a revelation to Seeker. Especially now. You're no longer the Zeke we knew. You're far more powerful and far more amazing. Yet the standards you hold towards us didn't change. We'd break Zeke. So please don't burden us. Seeker's eyes suddenly sparked a different light. There was intense, raging anger hidden deep in his eyes. You are right. I am no longer the Zeke you knew. That Zeke encountered a world of terror. Those memories did change me, and that's why I'm trying to change you. But let me ask you too something. Is this why you are afraid of the future? Meryl and Lind avoided Seeker's eyes at the question. Why is it that out of all the questions that you have or could ask me, you never once bothered to ask if the two of you are alive in the future? Seeker glared back. There was silence. The eyes of Seeker's two friends grew more and more depressed. We know we died, Zeke. Meryl started to cry. We didn't ask because we already knew. We can't live in that kind of world. Lind continued. What I don't get is why the two of you don't want to take any actions to change that future. Seeker responded calmly, but an angry storm was behind his soft voice. We're not like you. Even if we tried, we would fail. Meryl's sobs started to grow stronger. People around the room were noticing the crying looks in the eyes of two students in this table. Lind chose to remain silent, but tears were also filling his eyes. So instead of fighting, you simply accepted your fate? Seeker stopped observing the two and turned his attention one of the dishes in the table. Meryl and Lind couldn't look Seeker in the eye. They were helpless. You're not the only ones afraid. Will I be able to protect you two this time? Will I be able to save my family? Will I be able to save her? Seeker gave a frustrated laugh. In this table, the one who's most afraid of the future is me. Seeker paused as he continued to smash open his delicacies. But despite my fear, I was willing to fight. But now that even you can't have confidence in yourself, then I guess I really won't be able to protect you. Seeker started to angrily crush open a lobster. If you want to give up, you may. Lind and Meryl silently stared at their plates. Tears continued to gather in their eyes. I'll let you quit. Seeker finally broke the silence, but only after the power walkthrough. I still need you to help. It was a strange moment for Meryl and Lind. Though Seeker spoke of abandoning them, the intense burden and fear were finally lifted from their hearts. They gazed back at Seeker with an apologetic look. This was who they were, risings to their very blood. And at that moment of intense emotional depression, the weak ones lost the appetite to eat while the strong remained undaunted from the overflowing, emotionally stinging pain. They gazed at Seeker, who continued to eat. Truly, he was as they always knew, a champion amongst weak men. He always has been. And the intense memories that he has inherited only serve to make him stronger. But we'll still do the workouts. At least I could say I tried. Meryl and Lind cringed as they heard that statement. Chapter 16. An unconventional power walkthrough. The trio traveled to the duplex apartment silently. Seeker had a slightly grumpy aura, while the two would only follow their leader with a guilty and almost pleading look. They arrived at the duplex and no words were uttered as they immediately started to prepare for the stream. Seeker ignored the pleading looks his friends gave and continued with a harsh upper body workout. Meryl could barely move her arms. Lind was lying on the floor not moving. Seeker changed his clothes and started to prepare for the stream. When Meryl and Lind recovered from their near-death workout, they mounted their assigned position. Seeker nodded to Meryl, who immediately started the stream. As the room went online, the number of viewers immediately reached up to 87, and slowly more and more people started to dive in. Seeker smiled. Looks like we managed to get a lot of attention. Lind laughed softly. Things were still awkward between them. Meryl even had a melancholic look as she started chatting to the viewers of the stream. All right, guys, let's finally get rolling. Seeker sat at his chair as the stream started. As many viewers requested this, I mounted a camera on my head which is overlooking the controllers. Seeker demonstrated. The camera was now split into 3 screens. The stream for the actual game was broadcasted along with 2 small windows, one showing Seeker and another showing his hands and how he operated the controller. Without further ado, let's start the new game. The timer starts now. The stream began with the new game. The protagonist of Piercing, Bullet, was seen riding an elevator whistling happily. The elevators opened, and the Piercing agent casually walked out of the elevators, which alarmed the guards. Piercing Bullet? Yeah. I'm here to talk to Hollow. Can you let me in? I'm sorry, sir, but we can't dash. Bang. Bullet casually shot the guard with his trademark rifle. The alarm went off, and people started rushing out from the rooms and started to shoot at Bullet. Hollow, I'm here for my brother's gun. Bullet happily shouted. The game began. Seeker controlled Bullet and started attacking the guards. Now, since we are aiming for a power walkthrough, the first thing that we should do is spend about an hour in this particular stage. Seeker continued to attack the various guards utilizing various attack skills and combos. He rarely used his ranged skills, but continued to dash and strike the guards using the rifle as a melee weapon. The chat room was now flooded with questions. Why? This was the common questions that most viewers asked. Seeker kept attacking and attacking as the enemies continued to pour in. Piercing games prioritize skill as the most important trait when playing the game. However, many of Bullet's skills can only be used once you have reached a certain level of proficiency by using his basic skills. Now, the best place to train for skill points is in fact in this stage. Seeker smiled as he quickly eliminated the guards. More guards would appear as soon as some would die. What was impressive was how Seeker managed to eliminate the unending enemies without taking a single hit. Wait, it's infinite? Lind was shocked to find this development. He played that but knew for a fact that the enemies stopped spawning after a few kills. Now you may be wondering why the enemies are infinitely spawned. The answer is, it's not infinite. The game would immediately trigger the spawning of units every 15 seconds until there is a maximum of 7 enemies. But what if you manage to kill a lot of them before the 15 seconds end? Seeker smiled as he continued to kill several guards using intense attacks. There, the viewers were shocked as they witnessed an endless amount of enemies constantly spawning and coming through the doors near the elevator. Trying it now. It's really hard. I'm trying it too. How does he do that? How can he not get hit? The discussion became more interesting as several viewers tried Seeker's technique. Seeker calmly controlled his avatar and did not lose focus despite the chaotic speeds of his play. The general idea is to farm as much as you can in this stage and move on. This is the fastest place to farm for skills because we all know that enemy respawns only happen when we reset the game. So I suggest to farm as much as you can in this stage and move on if you've farmed enough. Seeker casually said, not even bothering to read whatever discussions the chat room now had. Those who attempted to apply the trick failed after 4 or 5 minutes of playing. However, the trick was proven to be true. Nearly an hour has passed in Seeker's game, and his progress continued to remain in the exact same stage. However, several skills were now unlocked. The speed and intensity of Seeker's control over his avatar evolved to a speed that many would feel dizzy. In fact, several viewers stopped watching and planned to return after Seeker would end his farming. Alright, now that the skills are set, let's go kill the boss. I think I can defeat the boss within 20 seconds. Seeker grinned and immediately zipped through the stage as he moved from room to room and finally reached a door which triggered a cutscene. Oh, hello, are you home? Bullet came in the door with a smile on his face. Bullet, you are aware that you'd be a priority target for Piercing if you attack me. Hallow stood wearing his dashingly formal attire. Ah, well, what can I say? I want my brother's gun that much. Bullet smiled. The cutscene ended, and the fight immediately began. Hallow unveiled his scythe and started to slash quickly. Seeker calmly controlled his avatars to back away and be outside of Hallow's scythe. At the third strike, Seeker immediately utilized a dashing skill he unlocked to dive right towards Hollow, then an unbreakable chain of attacks followed. Dashing, slashing upwards, downwards, zipping up and down. The series of attacks surprised all viewers. Piercing. Bullet was a game that featured Piercing Agent, Bullet. He held a rifle as the main weapon, so everyone assumed that the gameplay would be focused on ranged attacks, unlike its predecessor Piercing Edge. Seeker did not invest even a single second in using Bullet's ranged attacks, but invested heavily on melee attacks. Most players would invest as the damage of ranged attack far surpassed the damage of a simple melee attack. As the torrent of attacks continued, most of what the viewers could see was a blur. Barely 15 seconds has passed and a cutscene was revealed. Hollow was somersaulting backward and used his scythe to block a gunshot. He landed gracefully and stared angrily at Bullet. "Fine. You win. Take this stupid gun. But next time I'll fight seriously to kill you." Hollow walked over to a complex container nearby. He opened it and angrily took out a large handgun and tossed it over to Bullet. "Much obliged. Don't worry. I won't go look for you after this. I mean, once it's out, you'd fight to kill me." Bullet smiled and ran towards the balcony and jumped down. He continued to fall from the skyscraper. The cutscene ended and Bullet stood on one of the many rooftops of the city. The game continued. Wait, the boss fight ended so quickly? Several viewers only reacted after the cutscene ended. Seeker controlled Bullet to run as several soldiers would come up to him and fight him. The battles were intensely easier than it was on Seeker's first playthrough. Enemies would just die within 5 seconds once Seeker began his attacks. He quickly paced up and immediately went to eliminate the bosses. Seeker gained nothing in terms of experience points as this stage acted as a mini-tutorial. Skills attack experience points, however, depended on its proficiency of use. So as long as a skill attack connects with an enemy, experience points could be earned for that particular skill. At this point of the game, it's quite useless to gather experience points. If you're skilled enough, just go for the bosses. "We need to open the new areas of this game to progress faster," Seeker casually reported. "I thought this game would be about ranged attacks." "I thought too. Looks like it's still going to be a melee massacre." "I was so wrong. But what about the aerial enemies? How can he defeat those?" The commotion in the chat was far from over as various veteran players started to rethink their game strategy in Piercing Bullet. Noticing the commotion, Seeker once again stared at the camera and smiled. "As you noticed, I didn't allocate any points in my range attacks. Now going by this, the bosses on the next stage are either aerial or would position themselves as far as possible from the player. So I guess it's about time to bet. I have 20,000 credits, and I'm going to bet it that I can beat each boss in less than 2 minutes and not get hit from this point until I stop playing later. The last boss that I will fight tonight will be the penetrating sky bosses on the warehouse. Minimum buy-in of 100 credits." Seeker gave his bold declaration. Merrill immediately followed as ordered by Seeker and dumped all of his credits in the gambling den. The discussion on the chat group grew wild. Almost immediately when the den was opened did the credits flow in. Initially, there were only 7 players who placed their bets against Seeker, but it slowly increased over time. Seeker continued with his playthrough, and like this, 2 hours passed. Seeker would intentionally allow himself to almost get hit at times, which caused others to dive in and throw their credits in the den. The chat room continued to buzz with activities as more and more viewers willingly gambled their fortune. "You idiots! Can't you see he's taking your money? Haven't you learned anything from last night's stream? Just you wait. An unconventional build like that is sure to fail when he reaches the aerial enemies. You'll be sorry you didn't bet against him." Another viewer responded, "Idiot. He obviously has thought everything through. His unconventional play style could probably be the standard for all players in the future. And look, he's intentionally allowing himself to almost get hit. Can't you see how he would delay his movements? Look at how he's handling the controller." Seeker fought another boss, and his attacks weren't connecting as fast as that particular boss had a small frame and could easily get out of the attack range of Seeker. The fight continued, and once 1 minute and 30 seconds passed, more viewers started to invest their credits in the den. Sadly, they lost. Seeker immediately made quick work of the boss, and it ended in 1 minute and 51 seconds. Chapter 17. Casual Carlean. Seeker's gameplay continued for another hour, and later, people were anticipating yet another challenge. The aerial bosses. Soon Seeker's travels reached a large military base on the outskirts of the thriving city. Seeker controlled his character to attack the base. Piercing Agent. This is an impact-owned military base. Turn away, or we will attack. A warning was heard, but Seeker paid no heed to this warning and controlled Bullet to continue on towards the base. In the middle of the base, the mechanical floor gave way and several huge man-shaped robots dashed out and zipped towards Seeker with intense speed. Shoulder launchers appeared by the side of these robots and several missiles were fired. Seeker casually used an attacking skill to dash forward, and Seeker would immediately prematurely end the dash with another attack, and once the quick attack would end, Seeker would use the dash skill again. This cycle was expertly delivered and led to a fast-paced movement technique which could do damage. Seeker could now catch up with the dashing robots and would pummel it with a variety of melee attacks. Like this, the mechanical titans were demolished. Seeker slowly approached the base and a cutscene started. A reddish titan with a large engine in the back appeared and started flying in the air. The chat room was cheering. How could Seeker kill this boss as it was in midair? This was why several gamblers were confident of their win. Now here comes the painful part. Seeker's eyes grew serious. Those who placed their bets looked in glee. This was the first time that Seeker had a serious expression. The bets slowly increased as some players who were shocked at Seeker's expression decided to enter the last minute. Right now, with over 50 people joining in the bet, everyone would receive a share of over 3 times of their 100 credit buy-in. A piercing agent? A loud and painful voice echoed out as the Red Titan hovered over, unleashing a series of missiles. One of Bullet's skill was a missile defense system wherein Bullet would use his gun to destroy missiles that are approaching him. However, Seeker made no investment on any range skills. Therefore, he had no defenses to stop the missiles. On his previous playthrough, he had those skills with him which made the battle easier. Seeker controlled Bullet to run towards the missiles and started dashing, evading the torrent of missiles easily. How about this? The painful voice screamed again. Seeker frowned and continued to control Bullet to dash and drew closer and closer to the enemy. 2 more viewers entered the Denver. If this demigod of gamers frowned, then it could mean he was not confident. However, Seeker pushed on. Seeker used the dashing attack to launch himself in the air. It was just enough to connect to the hovering titan. However, Bullet stated to fall down and only managed to connect one attack. Many who gambled were smiling in amusement. Seeker could not use the quick attack and relaunch another aerial dash as it was a ground-based attack. Die, you piercing trash! The painful voice shouted again as it launched a different attack pattern. A salvo of missiles erupted and flew towards Bullet's position. Seeker used the aerial dashing attack to escape the arriving salvo, and as he was in midair, the Red Titan drew closer to the aerial Bullet and was about to launch an attack. Just before the attack could commence, Seeker used a skill which used the rifle as a pole and struck the enemy. As the attack connected, Seeker used the attack as a foothold to propel him further upwards, and then Seeker immediately used the aerial dash again. Seeker's avatar zipped through the Red Titan, inflicting small damage. But after Seeker dashed through the Red Titan, Seeker then used the same attack skill which propelled him upwards once more. Seeker then used another dash. Seeker continued with this cycle in a very precise and fast manner. The Red Titan continued to shout painful screams that made Seeker look annoyed. Seeker's attacks continued. The missiles that the Titan launched were of no use. They continued to travel downwards, and Seeker was always right beside or above the Red Titan. None of the viewers could type a message as they saw Seeker's fast and unusual techniques. Seeker zipped to and fro until the Red Titan's hit points shot down below its halfway mark. New. Then try this. The painful voice was heard once again. That's it. I've had enough of this. Seeker stood up and picked up the remote in the corner table and tried to mute the audio. He kept pressing random buttons as the sounds had not died down. As his right hand was doing that, he controlled his avatar using his left hand. Bullet was seen running around, evading the incoming missiles. Seeker, however, seemed focused on muting the television. Meryl and Lind had to contain the urge to urinate at the stressful situation that Seeker placed himself in. Seeker. Lind was about to run to grab the controllers. I'll get the remote. Geez, Meryl complained as she stomped off and snatched the remote from Seeker. It's not that one. It's this, Meryl shouted angrily. She took a different remote controller and muted the sounds. Seeker sat down once more. He looked very relaxed. I hate that voice. Ugh. Whoever suggested that I play with the volume on is an idiot. Hey Meryl, what are we having for dinner? Here, Take my card and order some pizza." Seeker then stood back up and rummaged to his back pocket. His left hand continued to control Bullet in parrying missiles and other attacks. "Seeker," Lin shouted again. He wanted to just pinch and crush that frustrating, nonchalant face of Seeker. All it took was to receive a single hit from those missiles, and they would be 20,000 credits per. Seeker finally managed to take out his wallet. He then used the thumb and index fingers of his left hand to pick a credit card out of the card slots, while his middle finger continued to move the analog joystick. Meryl and Lind looked very frightened and continued to cringe as their view turned back and forth from Seeker's controls and the screen. As Seeker took out the card and attempted to give it to Meryl, Meryl dashed angrily at Seeker and took the card. She could hardly contain the urge to dropkick her friend then and there. Seeker sat down and relaxed at the inclination of his chair. He controlled Bullet to dive in and started his aerial combos, which instantly killed the boss. It took 1 minute and 46 seconds for Seeker to kill this boss, and that included 10 seconds worth of delay since Seeker had to move away from the Titan as he made Bullet run around in circles. The chat room was buzzing with chats when Meryl went back to her seat. "My heart. My kidney. Oh look, I don't need to use the toilet anymore. Son of a." That's exactly what I do whenever I'm betting 20,000 credits to do a no-hit walkthrough with a boss-beating time limit of 2 minutes. Mute the TV and order dinner with one hand while I play with the other. Hail the new piercing prodigy, Casual Carlean. I'm watching this in the toilet. I've been having problems relieving myself due to chronic constipation, but I tell you, my constipation is cured now. Thank you, Casual Carlean. The doctor didn't need to defibrillate my uncle who was suffering from cardiac arrest. Watching Casual Carlean proved to be more effective. Thanks, Casual Carlean. Several similar comments were made that night, and several of which were featured online. This later created a mountain of curious viewers who accessed Seeker's streams later on. Lind and Meryl watched in exasperation. It was just as if they've just undergone another round of Seeker's exercise. It was just too much. The standing, the one-handed control, the muting, the wallet. Why the hell did he do that in the middle of the boss fight? Isn't there a pause button? As various thoughts continued to plague Lind and Meryl, the source of their plague, Seeker was having a very nonchalant time as he happily controlled Bullet to dive towards a group of enemies and instantly made scrap metal of them. The game progressed on, and soon, Seeker reached the warehouse where the penetrating sky soldiers reside. The cutscene began. A group of soldiers was waiting for Bullet to enter. They jumped up and started to fly. The elite group of soldiers known as Penetrating Sky was a mockery of the piercing name. The soldiers used weapons and ammunition similar to various piercing soldiers. Penetrating Sky used specialized guns that fired bullets at an incredibly fast speed. However, just as it was with the slow-moving missiles, Seeker had no problems evading everything. He dashed and dashed around, and once he would be directly below one of the soldiers, Seeker would utilize the same aerial combo to immediately kill the soldier. Once everyone saw how easily a soldier died, they knew that Seeker had won the bet. Seeker dashed and went to pursue another soldier, and he instantly killed it with a blur of combos. Then another soldier died, and then another. As the soldiers slowly perished one by one, there were curses and strange voodoo chants filling the chat logs. Naturally, the source of these messages were the frustrated gamblers who placed their bets. None of their chants worked. Seeker managed to defeat the last soldier with ease. Seeker smiled and simply stared straight at the camera. "Thank you for your generous donations." Seeker smiled. The processing of the gambling den immediately initiated, and Seeker was deemed the winner of the bet. Just like that, Seeker earned 4,300 credits through the den. "Tomorrow I will continue my power walkthrough same time," Seeker announced. There were lots of complaints as they wanted Seeker to continue to play. The impossibility displayed by Seeker was a tremendous lesson to many. "I'm sorry guys, I'm still a student. After all, I can't live off playing games. I mean, how do I sustain myself?" Seeker shamefully asked. At this time, Seeker was to earn a total of 10,950 credits from people viewing the stream and 5,700 credits from the den. Several pained emotions were expressed at Seeker's very shameful statement. "See you tomorrow, guys. Same time. Remember to share this vid. Bye now." Just like that, the stream ended. The stream became the most talked about topic amongst gamers that night. Almost every gaming website talked about Seeker's stream. On the 20th floor of a tall skyscraper, 5 teens were watching the stream. Impressive. A short teen with thick glasses and dark hair spoke. He watched earnestly at how Seeker controlled Bullet to evade and attack. At the same time, he seemed to be counting something, and he continued to mumble numbers under his breath. We should join the stream tomorrow. This will definitely get their attention. The only female of the group spoke. She had pink hair, thin glasses, and a very white complexion and beauty that would match movie stars. She smiled and started giggling as she saw Seeker stand and started using the remote. The others, however, were cringing at what Seeker did. Everyone held their breath as they watched Seeker pick his card whilst controlling Bullet with his middle finger. Well, no matter what they offer him, he'd most likely join us. Chris, you should join the stream alone tomorrow. A personal touch from you should be enough. The short teen ordered, unaffected by what he saw. He carried on counting under his breath. The pink-haired girl smiled and nodded. Her eyes were full of anticipation. Chapter 18. The Blue and the Yellow. A huge light beam flashed across the city. Several skyscrapers were halved, and the upper half started to collapse. Several of the UN soldiers were still running as they saw the collapsing skyscrapers. Though they were directly under it, they didn't display even a hint of fear. The soldiers suddenly stopped running and gazed at the falling debris. Commander, we can't make it there on time. The soldier screamed. A blue gem embedded on a silver ring started glowing as the soldier screamed. Another soldier continued to gaze at the debris of the skyscrapers, continued to fall towards them. For some, it was imminent death. But to inhumans such as themselves, this would simply amount to an obstacle course. Death was the most unlikely result of evading falling buildings. I wished I paid more attention to General Humphrey's math lessons, a certain soldier sighed. As the debris were 30 meters from the ground, the squad immediately used their force boosters and soared towards the debris. What followed next was expert maneuvering of acrobatic actions paired by timely boost. They would kick and use debris as a foothold and dash higher towards the sky as they evaded and dodged the steel beams and broken concrete. Suddenly, a light flashed far on their east side. Evade! A soldier cried. A large, dark, bluish electrical beam blasted towards them. 2 soldiers were unable to react on time and were engulfed by the beam and incinerated them. The wind pressure that followed from the powerful blast affected the rising soldiers and disoriented them. Some managed to maintain focus and continued to rise across the debris, but 3 more succumbed to the disorientation. Will? A soldier attempted to dive back down to save them, but another soldier tackled him upwards. We can't. It's too dangerous. The remaining soldiers continued to rise through the falling debris and finally made it out of the falling half of the skyscraper. The soldiers landed on what remains of the upper half, and the soldier who attempted to dive down fell to his knees. No, not Will. The soldier started to cry. Get up, another ordered. Now's not the time to cry. Will's not dead. Look, Commander Carlean's here. The soldier looked up in hope, and true enough, there stood one of the strongest soldiers in the Griffin army. Commander Seeker Carlean was using the 4-force accelerator to evade even more of the electrical blast. He was handling 3 of the fallen soldiers and was throwing them to safe positions. He can see light speed attacks. He broke through. He must be on the surmounting stage. We still have hope, team. Come on, we have to head down. On me. The soldier bravely announced and dashed towards an area where explosions and gunfire continued to hail. Seeker was now blasting and zipping through the city. He used buildings as footholds and would dash towards another. His speed continually broke through the sound barrier. The electric blast managed to aim precisely at Seeker, but Seeker was able to dodge the attack at hairbreadth. I will kill you. Seeker dashed faster. His falling tears would immediately be whipped out of the wind pressure that Seeker continually faced. His heart was heavy. His body was wounded on various places, but all these pains were no longer something that Seeker paid attention to. He would kill that damned spaceship even if he would give half of his body to entropy. On the other side of the battle stood a huge spherical ship. The ship continued to emit electrical energies that would fry anything that touches it. Occasionally, it would concentrate the electrical energy and blast it off to a direction. Some smaller electrical blast was used to attack various areas where enemy soldiers were detected. A majority of the electrical charges, however, were aimed at the flying and evading ranked hero. Several missiles managed to hit this spherical ship, and the ship trembled. The damage that this gargantuan had taken was immense that it was only a miracle that it could continue to utilize its star technology to keep it afloat. On the upper half of this ship was a large hole that penetrated deep within. The damage it received at that point disabled its electrical shields, allowing missiles and rockets to inflict damage towards it. Seeker would dash behind buildings, and the intermittent blast would carve holes into these buildings, but no matter how many times the ship fired, Seeker would evade it. As Seeker neared the floating ship, he dashed on top of a building and waited for the ship to shoot him. Seeker downed the building as an electrical beam blasted through the building in half. Seeker then jumped on the many falling debris and used it as a foothold. He gave one strong dash and shot through the air onto the roof of this spherical ship. The gargantuan emitted a powerful shockwave of electrical currents that surged around the ship. Arcs of lighting and beams continued to shoot out of it. Almost every side of the ship was emitting these lightning attacks. But this didn't stop Seeker. He continued to force through and evaded the electrical beams and reached the upper portion of the ship. Seeker quickly zipped through and dove down the hole. Checkmate. The captain of the gargantuan sighed. It looks like we gambled too quickly, boys. See you if there's an other side. He sat down with a grave expression and tried to accept his death. Apart from the people in the main bridge of the gargantuan, no one else knew of the monster that was now in the ship. Most of the ship's crew were caught unprepared. It was as if a gentle breeze passed by, a breeze that caused death. Men and women and even some young teens and kids on board the gargantuan all met the blade of the death tide. A loud sound similar to a loud rocket launching echoed through the hallways of the ship. Masked within this rocketing sound was an angry howl of a man. Once someone would hear this loud shout, it was too late. Blood and gore were all that would be left behind as Seeker dashed. Everyone on the bridge was prepared. They had accepted their death the moment Seeker dove in. No one could even use the self-destruct sequence as the immense suicidal attack of the enemy commander has penetrated deep and even damaged the star controller. As the crew peacefully sat there, some of them would be halved, some beheaded. The captain stood there witnessing the death of his crew. What rage! The captain thought. Everyone on the bridge was either halved or dismembered into 3 or 4 pieces, but he simply received a stab. He would die, but it would be slow. In his dying moments, he experienced the slowing of time. He saw the hole on his chest and reminisced how his actions led to the death of everyone on board. Seeker reached for the main controls and used it to move the gargantuan towards the main forces of the African army. He controlled the ship and initiated a kamikaze attack on the remaining enemy forces directly under it. The ship continued to emit electrical surges which killed several soldiers and destroyed several large humanoid robots. Boom! The crashing sound echoed loudly. Several of Earth's soldiers then started to come out and shot at the survivors of the crash. The soldiers of Earth were cheering. Victory was assured. Seeker dashed out of the wreckage and landed in the nearby area where some of the soldiers were cheering. After confirming their victory, he fell down in fatigue. His attire was pitiful. He had several wounds and burnt marks. His synthetic clothing was in tatters. Several soldiers immediately ran to Seeker. Seeker looked at them and smiled. Tears, however, continued to flow in Seeker's eyes. Commander, a soldier immediately reached out to help Seeker stand. Several soldiers assisted in carrying Seeker. People were cheering. Ranked hero Seeker Carlean finally managed to eliminate the remaining threats in the sector. An echoing sound was heard on the skies above. A small flying object could be noticed as it approached in tremendous speed. As the figure drew near, people started recognizing it. World Champion! Some of the soldiers exclaimed excitedly. The blurring image immediately locked on towards where Seeker was and zoomed towards the area. In just a matter of seconds, the small figure was already standing in front of the limping Seeker Carlean, who was being supported by 2 soldiers. The figure was an Asian man of average build and height. He wore a black synthetic clothing similar to what Seeker wore. He wore a slightly larger version of the 4-force accelerator that Seeker also had. He had a strict face and a pair of red eyes that looked like that of a demon. Report, the man commanded. Commander Seeker Carlean reporting, sir. Seeker did not even bother to salute. Rather, he had no strength to do so. Carlean? Report. What is the status of your mission? What happened to your general? General has received tremendous damage and is currently incapacitated. What? The Realm King is incapacitated? The man quickly observed the surrounding wreckage and realized the intensity of the battle. Gargantuans and titans, huh? How bad is it? His life is not in danger, but it might take a while for him to recover. That's both good and bad. We can't afford an incapacitated world champion. Where is the commanding officer next in line to take command? Seeker was silent for a few seconds. He is right in front of you, sir, Seeker answered. The man frowned. I see, the man solemnly replied. There was dread and even regret in his voice. All right. As of this moment, you will stand as the acting general. Make your report, General. Yes, sir. Seeker paused as tears continued to flow down his eyes. He, however, maintained his fierce gaze and serious look. We have succeeded in destroying their main orbital ship and acquired the plans and location of another Gigas-class orbital scheduled to launch. However, they were expecting us. The Aragarians deployed several gargantuan in an attempt to ambush us. We managed to destroy all of it. Not even one managed to retreat, but... Seeker paused. He tried to contain his crying and sobbing voice. Commander Indigo and Commander Mikado has fallen in battle. The man frowned again. He had expected this, but hoped that his expectations were wrong. He turned around and did not respond to Seeker. The surrounding soldiers were shocked to hear Seeker's sentence. Some even fell on their knees and started crying. Seeker gripped his fist in frustration. The synthetic gloves did not hinder the force which caused his palms to bleed. The tears could no longer be stopped. Seeker, who had the capability to master his own emotions with his unlocked powers, started to cry. The blue gem embedded on the back of the world champion's head started glowing. Headquarters. Reporting the situation here in Southeast Asia. Mission Moon Caesar is a success, however General Realm King is injured. He may not recover in time for the next mission. Also, the man stared at the crying soldiers around him. He sighed. This mission's success is attributed to the brave sacrifices of World Champion, Commander Lind Indigo, and Ranked Hero, Commander Meryl Mikado. I am handing the mantle of command of the Realm King's armies to surmounting Ranked Hero, Seeker Carlean. The man dashed out and flew to the high skies, racing towards another battlefield. Seeker continued to cry. Even the soldiers around him were tearing up. In the eyes of most soldiers, they were victorious. But as of that moment, only a few soldiers knew about what they lost in this battle. They lost two great leaders that day. Hope became a far fleeting thing only to dream of, but never within their grasps. Seeker woke up. There were tears in his eyes. He was about to massage his head but remembered that Charles had connected several high-tech probes and wires to his cranium regions. The cons of the unlocked mind. Seeker sighed as he rubbed his eyes. What an accurate nightmare. Seeker laughed bitterly. Chapter 19. Faith of a Believer. Seeker continued to lie down as the machines connected to him ran several tests. Seeker started closing his eyes as if he was meditating. After a few minutes, the door opened. Charles, Seeker addressed as his eyes were closed. Sorry for the trouble. We should be done in a few minutes. Meryl and Lynn told me about what happened in the restaurant. You sure you know what you're doing? Seeker just smiled and nodded. Look, I agree with their point of view. I didn't know that you guys are from the Rising Group. I thought you'd be a royal. Seems like you guys had a lot to talk about. Seeker smiled. Well, yeah. I did warn you that I thought these guys are, well, weak. For the lack of a better word. Seeker laughed. You're wrong. Seeker bitterly laughed. Weak? If they're weak, what was he? Well, I mean, they died in the future, didn't they? World champions died in the future. That doesn't make them any weaker than me. Seeker sarcastically stared. Charles was silent for a moment. Wait, exactly who would Lind and Meryl be in the future? Seeker was silent. He gave a deep sigh. Meryl Mikado. Did you notice anything special about her? Charles gave a peculiar look. I don't know. She seemed timid and brave, I guess. Charles shrugged. She has a talent at looking at bright things longer than others. Seeker smiled. We would even spend some days at the Bright Park having a contest at who could stare at the sun the longest. She would always win. Charles stood there and wondered. Great. Good for her. Charles commended with a doubtful expression. Right. A weird talent. We never thought it would amount to anything. Well, probably in some fields of science it would. What about in warfare? Seeker grinned. I'm not sure. Unless she could keep her eyes open in front of a flashbang and withstand it. Seeker smiled. Of course she can't. Well, that was until she was unlocked. Charles was surprised at Seeker's revelation. You see, apparently her tolerance towards light is vastly different from others. And because she was proud of it, she kept developing this useless talent, and once she attained the unlocking, she transformed it into a weapon of warfare. How can that be used? By combining stellar and nuclear science, our scientist managed to create a powerful form of the flashbang. It could create bright light so immense that nothing could see through it. How is that possible? Won't there be technologies that could use different forms of vision to see through this light? Not when it's facing the sun flash. We all know that the sun produces different waves of light. Light which can be seen by the naked eye, and light that couldn't. The combination of the two technologies created a light that no form of vision could see through. Well, except Meryl's eyes. Charles was shocked at the revelation. That's right. Imagine fighting something you couldn't even look at. Something that could make everything around a few kilometers as bright as the sun. No technology could see through her, but she would walk and see in it. It won't even hurt her eyes. You sound as if you admire her greatly. I do. They called me Seeker, the death-tide Carlean. Do you know why? Charles shook his head. I managed to cause what appeared to be a tide of dead bodies in one of the major battles on Earth. Stop flinching. It wasn't that great. People exaggerated it. Picture about 30 to 40 human bodies sliced and hacked up and would just roll out of the broken doors and windows of an evacuating spaceship. Seeker grinned. I don't want to picture that. Charles replied unamused. But you see, I wasn't known for any special trait or skill. Truth be told, among those who reached ranked hero, I wasn't anyone special. I wouldn't be able to hold my candle around other ranked heroes. People like Meryl, they were different. The moment she debuted her first ranked hero battle, her nickname was set. Ranked hero Meryl Mikado, Empress of the Sun. Charles gulped. That timid short girl was actually a weapon of great power. In fact, she was next in line with the highest potentials to be one of the world champions. How is that possible? Meryl and Lind were earlier insisting that you are a genius. And she's actually better than you? Yeah, about that. I guess I was surrounded by geniuses that I never considered myself as one. But you see, it's not about being a genius. In terms of unlocking, you can't reach ranked hero or higher by sheer knowledge, skill, or talent alone. Then what do you need? Faith? Basically the power of a believing mind. What? Charles looked surprised. I guess we could call it by a terminology you're more familiar with. The placebo effect. Placebo? Did they tell you about what happened with Cliff? That drug addict? Yeah. Meryl said you used some strange trick to make them be very afraid. It petrified them. You see, that's interesting. They saw how it affected Cliff and his gang, but did not even flinch. Wait, you mean you didn't intend that? I thought you were only aiming for those delinquents. I can't, or I don't know how. You see, to achieve that I would have to push my brain to activate a certain form of hormones. Ones that could trigger fear. Anyone who would be able to smell it would have been affected. I've seen studies and attempts to prove how a certain scent could cause fear but I didn't know dash. Crash. Charles immediately stumbled. He could no longer stand. An empowering fear covered him. Unlike the spine-chilling sensation he once felt, this didn't even allow him to move or breathe. Suddenly the sensation ended. Charles was gasping and slowly stood up. He knew what he felt. Scared. He was scared of the teen who was lying down on a bed with several machines attached to the teen's brain. How did that happen? Convinced? Seeker stared with a non-committal attitude. Charles nodded his head vigorously. He never wanted to feel that way again. And yet, Meryl wasn't affected by that smell. Disgusting monsters. What? How? Didn't she feel the spine-chilling sensation the other day when we were discussing the plans? Well, I think it was doubt. I mean, they learned of my memories and how I'm a reincarnator. Maybe they were suspicious of me. But I guess by the next day, they somehow accepted me and treated me as a friend once more. How would that be able to make Meryl immune to fear? I'm an army doctor, for Christ's sake. I should at least have some resistance, but she did because she thought of you as her friend? Charles demanded. He felt a bit insulted that the overpowering sensation was just like a breeze of wind to two teenagers. Frustrating, right? I feel you. Seeker smiled. Finally, Someone could share his insecurities with his friends. She believed that I'm her friend. She believed I wouldn't hurt her no matter what. So when the hormones I released was transmitted into her brain simply refused to interpret me as a threat. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. The brain receives signals, be it from sight, scent, or whatever, and you're telling me that for Meryl, their brain simply disregarded those signals like some piece of note from a suggestion box? Charles complained. Oh, ye of little faith. Seeker laughed. Think about how the placebo effect managed to cure and heal various kinds of diseases across the world. It's a proven fact. The mind can do powerful things because the mind controls the entire body, down to its very cells and DNA. How is that possible? I don't know. What? You don't know? I really don't. Those two are special. A simple faith that transformed into a power of will that can convince the mind. Even I can't do that. It's actually one of the necessary elements to reach world champion. So in order to unlock someone, they need the power of believing? Well, you could reach inhuman and possibly ranked hero without these. But going beyond there, you need it. Take Meryl, for example. She believed, and as was accredited to her faith, her brain evolved. It morphed into something that could simply cancel light or limit it to a vast extent. I don't really get the science, but that's basically the gist of it. I just can't do that. I never managed to, even when I knew the theory behind it. So just because she believed that you are his friend with all her heart and soul, she managed to negate a type of fear that could send someone like me to my knees? Disgusting, right? At that time, I poured out enough hormones that could paralyze a veteran soldier, and they just stood like I was a plush teddy bear. Seeker complained. Then why didn't you tell Meryl about this? This could have helped her to be more confident. Wrong. It wouldn't clear her fears. It might even hinder her. Think, Charles. The power of suggestion is a powerful weapon when it comes to inducing placebo, but only if the recipient truly believes it. For Meryl, it wouldn't help. This is because of my existence. Even you right now, at this very moment, still struggle with disbelief at the facts of my existence. If I told Meryl that she could reach ranked hero, at the back of her mind, she'd probably think that I'm lying in order to motivate her, and it may even hinder the unlocking. Charles couldn't argue with Seeker's explanation. Seeker was right. I see. At worst, she may never achieve the unlocking towards ranked hero or world champion. Exactly. Seeker sighed. You see, I'm in a bit of a dilemma here. I'm not sure how to motivate her without altering her simple faith. Seeker started to rub his forehead in frustration. I miscalculated. I can't believe that my very existence could alter the course of history this devastatingly. Seeker lamented. The ripples you make in this continuum are far bigger than we first imagined. Looks like you are right. Missing a simple coffee meeting could change the world as well as you know it. In any case, I'm very sure that I must never reveal her true capabilities. She must believe on herself through her own methods. Don't worry. I won't tell Meryl of her capabilities. What about Lind? What level of unlocking did he reach? Seeker smiled. I was blessed to be their friends, you know. I was very proud of them. Most of the battles I fought had them beside me. Lind was far greater than me and Meryl. Seeker sighed. His heart would ache every time he would remember the last moments of his friends. The world champions called people like Meryl believers. This is because with their simple and innocent faith, they had the highest potential to reach world champion. However, they had a different term for Lind when he became ranked hero. His belief system was so powerful that it didn't make sense even to those in the world champion realm. Even world champions couldn't understand Lind? Seeker nodded. He was a prodigy amongst ranked heroes. He could even emulate skills only world champions have. And upon reaching world champion, several scientific breakthroughs about the unlocking were made. It was as if his unlocking held the very potential on how to break through past the world champion realm. Charles gasped. If he would be the starting science that could bring hope to the world, then Lind potential held the very power to save it. What was he called? He had many names in his career as a soldier, but amongst world champion, he was called the Prophet Elijah, the one who prepares the way. Chapter 20. The Celebrity's Arrival. A strange scene occurred at school the next day. Even the teachers noticed the commotion and wondered why there was building crowd at the gates of the school. It was as if a celebrity arrived. Dozens of students, with the male gender being the majority, were huddled up and was excitingly talking with someone. Some students were confused as to who was the person standing in the middle of the crowd. "It's a celebrity," a female student exclaimed. Her fanatic appearance and reactions had drawn more to gather in the middle. Several of the students who saw who it was that arrived all gasped in surprise and started running towards the crowd in an attempt to talk to the arriving celebrity. Others who were caught in the flow decided to go along despite not knowing who it was that arrived. The entire school quickly noticed the ongoing commotions at the gate, causing many to flock in curiosity. The shocked cry of several males and a few female students confused those nearby. However, the fanatic rush towards the apparent figure made them not voice out their unfamiliarity to this passing figure. People even started taking pictures and asked for selfies from the strolling person. Most of the fans were male, with a few fanatic females who seemed in love. This confused the onlookers even more. "Get out of the way," a voice ordered. Ted Zychron was one of the more influential royals in school. His reputation in school was something that not many would attempt to mess with. A royal with deep pockets and a very arrogant and selfish personality. A pity that he had the strength and smarts to carry this lofty manner. Aside from being the source of victories that the school has, he also hails from an influential family. "Regulars and risings, get away from the celebrity," he ordered strongly. "The arriving celebrity must receive this school's best. So move away now." A lot of rising and regular students were secretly murdering Ted in their thoughts, but they left this crime enclosed in their imaginations. The crowd slowly parted and gave way to the arrogant parade of royals. The slow movements made by some of the rising students made Ted angrier. "Get out quickly. You risings don't need to mingle with the star. It's not like any of you will amount to anything anyway." Ted moved quickly to the middle of the crowd. Soon he was at the center of the parting people. 3 lone students stood in the center. They were of the rising group. "What are you doing here? Can't you see the royals have business with the celebrity who arrived?" Ted angrily chastised. "All right, sorry for the intrusion." The teen in the middle urged his 2 companions to join the crowd in the background of this gathering. Ted stood confused. There was no one left in the center of the circle. Where did the celebrity go? The confused Ted asked. People started to laugh. No one knew who started the giggling, but it became louder. Ted was angered beyond measure, but he tried to contain it as to not embarrass himself from their visitor. Ted talked to a nearby royal student. "Where's the celebrity? I don't see her." The royal student shrugged off and was just as confused as him. He gazed at the other student standing beside him with a stare that demanded answers. The royal student gulped. This was not the first time that he became the recipient of Ted's temper flares. "I don't know. I don't see any female celebrity here," the poor youth cried. The laughing became even stronger when they heard the cry of the poor youth, who told them that it was a female celebrity. "Where is she?" Ted roared. There were some who also could not spot any celebrity around, yet a vast majority of the males in the crowd were laughing. Ted glared once more at the poor youth. The youth was panicking and searched every inch of his surroundings. He surveyed the location, making sure not to miss any faces. None. There were no celebrities, even if he searched through the horizon. Just then, he came to a familiar face. It took him a few seconds, and then it struck him. "Casual Carlean?" the youth shouted in shock. Right in front of the laughing rising students was Seeker Carlean. He was shaking his head in pity towards Ted. "You study here?" The youth was unable to hide his surprise and reacted immediately. He was in awe at the gameplay of Seeker and spent the night studying every movement, technique, and timing that this genius presented. After the power walkthrough, Seeker's video was shared online and reached a worldwide trend. Any gamer worth their hit points knew the name Casual Carlean now. The insanely impossible stunts and the perfectly accurate power walkthrough throttled Seeker's rise to fame easily. The video was also supported with various trending memes and comedic screenshots, which gave people outside the gaming community something to laugh about as well. Gamers were sharing it, pros were sharing it, celebrity gamers, and even celebrities who were fans of the Piercing franchise also shared it. In fact, documentaries and in-depth analysis of Seeker's gameplay were even made by Precept Gaming, as it was agreed that his speed and accuracy in playing the game would definitely conquer the world record for beating the game. It was not a speculation. People were already accepting it as fact. Casual Carlean. It was a domineering name that every serious gamer would talk about. Where is the celebrity? Ted demanded as he noticed the youth stare in awe at a random rising student. Boo, but Ted, I think he's the celebrity. The poor youth pointed at Seeker. He's known as Casual Carlean, the current undisputed best handler of Bullet in the Piercing series. The youth was sweating in fear. There was a lot of cheers as this youth made the compliment. People started chanting, Casual Carlean, Casual Carlean. Ted realized that Seeker was the person that everyone was chanting as the crowd started to regroup towards Seeker. Quiet, Ted angrily roared. You're the one who is causing all this? Ted glared angrily. It would be falsehood to claim that my existence in this very locus isn't the impetus for this congregation's festivities, Seeker mocked. Ted was becoming angrier. Seeker was clearly attacking his intelligence, but who could blame him? After arrogantly clearing the path, Ted already spoke to the celebrated figure who arrived, but immediately shooed him away. Then I order you to stop this. You are causing a disturbance in this school. You rising rat. Probably, but I wonder why. You said that no rising student could ever amount to anything. I wonder why even some royals know me. Oh well. Seeker casually left the scene without even paying any mind to the angered royal. The crowd started to disperse as many immediately left after finding out it was just a game celebrity. Ted stood there with angry eyes, but he could not do anything towards Seeker. Most rising and regular students were happy at the misfortune of Ted. It was rare for someone of his power and arrogance to receive their just desserts like that. After that, the class continued naturally with a full day of learning. Ted, however, was very frustrated at his current status. People would secretly laugh when he walked by. He went online and searched what made Seeker Carlean so successful. As he started to watch the video, a malicious idea surfaced. There was a way to punish Seeker. He turned to the one person who he knew could help him. Miss Cipral, I have something to report. A student of the rising classes is participating in online gambling. It's Seeker Carlean. Ted approached the walking teacher. The teacher stopped and smiled. It was Alian Cipral. Though she was wearing a thin, dark-framed glasses today and not her usual contact lens, her beauty remained unmatched within the school. Carlean? You mean the son of Detective Carlean? Interesting. She smiled. While a dark scheme was being formed, Seeker himself continued to walk around and talk to several students who inquired of his success. How did you do it, Seeker? A fan-driven female arrived. Can you teach me how? She teased. Lind was tongue-tied. This was one of the prettiest royal in school. Seeker simply laughed and casually talked with the girl. There were several royals who were lining up to talk to Seeker. When their turn to talk came, they immediately talked business to Seeker. They offered a business proposal to let Seeker stream on their site, while another offered to pay him for advertising a line of business he was starting. The royals were the elite in their school. Many already owned a business. Lind and Merrill were flustered as Seeker would immediately point to the two and instruct the prominent royal students to talk to my manager. Oh, okay then. Miss Merrill and Mr. Lind, right? A knowledgeable royal immediately reacted. Some of the royals around him cursed. They didn't know the name of Seeker's two friends. Who would have thought that they would be the key? For Lind and Merrill, who has never received attention from such groups of people, this was very startling. Another royal approached them. Miss Merrill, I would presume you to be the manager of Seeker Carlean. How about I invite you to coffee to discuss a proposal I have for your stream? This tall, dark, and suave royal approached Merrill and bent down with flirtatious eyes. The woman who was previously conversing with Seeker frowned. She had gone nowhere with her talk to Seeker, so she approached Lind. Haha, you must Lind, right? You must be as good as Seeker when playing, right? When are you planning to stream your own play? She teased. Merrill and Lind were panicking. Two people who they considered to be way out of their league were now flirting with them. Merrill was blabbering something about Seeker's schedule while Lind was simply stuttering and doing his best to not suffer from a sudden panic attack. They kept gazing at Seeker, who in turn would just look back and enjoyed the scene of their suffering. Mr. Carlean, an angry and strict, sweet voice sounded. Seeker smiled. He already knew whose voice was this. Seeker turned around and there stood the secret puppet master who controlled all the puppets in school. Alian Cipral gazed with a haughty and proud look. Behind her was the royal who fell from grace, Ted Zircon. I have received certain reports that you are participating in various illegal activities here in school. She smiled sweetly. If only she wasn't a demon cloth in angelic grace, then Seeker might even appreciate that smile. Miss Cyprill, I have no clue as to what you were talking about. Seeker casually shrugged. The royals talking to Meryl and Lind made excuses and started running. They knew things were going badly for the three. Come with me. We will be meeting with the principal to discuss your punishment. Allianz smiled wickedly. She turned and walked. Ted was grinning ear to ear. Meryl and Lind had an angry look at Ted. They knew he was behind this. That's what you get for messing with me, rising rat. Ted gloated and followed Allianz. Lind and Meryl didn't know what to do, but then Seeker immediately walked. The two was startled and quickly followed Seeker. Zeke, Meryl worriedly whispered. Don't worry, Meryl. It's all taken care of. I knew something like this would happen and made the necessary precautions. Seeker took out his phone and dialed a number. Oh, you just woke up? Sorry for this, but you need to get here quick. It's earlier than I anticipated. Without waiting for a reply, Seeker immediately hung up the phone. The two wondered at the sudden actions that Seeker made. He, however, displayed no fear as to what was transpiring. Because of this, they sighed in relief. How can these mere dramas be of any obstacle to Seeker?